We all need a quiet keyboard.
Yeah. Okay. Good morning. Today is Friday, May 14th, and we are here for a school board workshop. Today's business will be discussing the superintendent search. As it is a workshop, there is no public comments today, and but we thank you all for being here. Appreciate you being here. And I am going to turn this over. I'm going to introduce Mr. Cashman, who will be our facilitator, and he's going to take us through the process and hiring of the interim superintendent. And Mr. Cashman, welcome, and the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Today's agenda, we're going to go over the rubric for scoring the applicants.
Mr. Cashman, can you, I don't know if you could move that, the mic closer, or is it?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So first, I just want to review today's agenda. We're going to review the rubric for scoring the applicants and how we'll be scoring. The second agenda item will be reviewing how many candidates we will have, and we're looking at...
Cashman, I'm so sorry. I don't know if that, Ms. Stillwell, is his mic on?
No.
I just want to make sure that everybody can hear.
Test, test.
Madam Chair.
Test, test.
I'm just going to, once again, make a suggestion that when we speak, we remove the masks, because I don't know about you two, but I can't hear Attorney Bruno, and now I can't hear Mr. Cashman, other than a muffled communication, and it's really difficult to get all the important...
Since we're 6 feet apart, can we, while we're up here?
Well, I was
don't
just
know.
suggesting that it's so much clearer when we speak if we have the mask removed or down, just while we're speaking, please.
Mr. Dupree, Bruno, can you respond to that?
We did ask that the volume for Mr. Cashman be increased from the tech side, so I believe that they're working on that.
So no.
I'm speaking about regarding Mr. Cashman not having to have his mask on to speak here.
If Mr. Cashman is comfortable with removing his mask while he's speaking, that's fine.
Thank you.
Okay. 3 agenda items we'll review today will be the rubric for scoring the applicants. This is specific to the interim hiring process, and we'll review how we'll be scoring. The second agenda item will be to determine how many candidates we want for the interim process, and we'll be considering between 3 and 5. The third is to determine the process we'll follow to pick a search firm for the permanent superintendent. Some key dates, May 21st will be the deadline for the interim applicants to apply. May 24th, the board will start the interviews. June 7th will be the board will determine the interview finalist, and June 8th the board will select the finalist. Did I miss anything on the agenda?
Nope, you have.
Okay.
Thank you.
One of the things I'd like to do, just to help the group get grounded.
I'm sorry.
Wait, hold on. So, run that by me. May 24th is what?
May 24th, that I had the board interviews would start.
Well, don't we have to select our top candidates? Are we going to interview every candidate?
Determine that today, that we'll have between 3 and 5.
How can we do that?
Without having them, they can't.
We don't have the resumes.
No, the resumes will come out as we spoke, so all the resumes
On the
will be dropped
21st.
on the 21st.
Right.
The rubric will be completed. Every one of us will have that rubric prior to that taking place.
Weekend.
Yes, so that way we have that to help us with the choosing. Then we're deciding how many of those applicants we will have, and then based on that is when we move into the next step of starting the interview. Some of them will be via Zoom, because some will not be here, and that's individuals. And then we're going to go at a later date and have the,
But are we going, my question is, let's say we have 15 applicants. We're going to do 15 interviews? I thought we were going to narrow down.
Now, the second agenda item, we'll go through how many applicants we'd like to interview, and we're suggesting 3 to 5. So
Okay, so when you say interviews will start, you're talking of those 3 to 5 that were the top. See, that's not clear, and that's, I've been getting a lot of emails on that, and I've been correcting people because they were saying, well, how do you start email, or how do you start interviews that fast? I mean, somebody who's professional, you have to give them some notice, and some of these might be working people, and so I just don't.
Yeah, so one of the things I'd suggest is when we get into how many candidates we'd want in our second agenda, then we'll go over that information. So we'll just take it agenda at a time. I'd suggest we'll go through the rubric first, and then in the second agenda, we'll go through the number of candidates and discuss your point.
Okay.
and again, if there's, if we need to, add, this is like the dates that we had secured.
Okay.
If we need to add a date, a meeting here and there, and we have to do that, we have to do that.
Okay, because now I'm seeing, because I was just listening, and now I'm seeing choose candidates to interview, and interviews start on the 25th, not the 24th. Right?
Correct.
Okay, that's not what I heard, so.
On the 24th, we will choose.
Choose.
On the 25th, between those dates, because people are not in town, or we, given that amount of time for everybody to have the opportunity to interview those people.
And somebody's going to need to be contacting all of them on the 24th, so maybe that should be added.
Ms. Fisher?
Yeah, I was just going to mention that on the 25th, we have a briefing and a board meeting.
Right.
And a longevity ceremony.
Right, but this is just on the, these dates we gave like a span of time, so that way we would have, because not all of us will be able to speak to a person maybe on the 25th or the 26th, so we gave that, that window to make sure that everybody is, because I know we have people that will not be here, physically here, so they're still going to be able to do their interviewing through Zoom.
Right.
And then we, whoever else is here, that will be determined on, once we have those candidates, then we know, say if we have 3, so we know we have 3 candidates, so 3, that's 21 visits.
Yes, I
you know?
understand. May I suggest that we just let Mr. Cashman proceed then, so that we can get through the agenda and hit each item as it's planned? Yeah,
Yes.
thank you.
So what I'd like to do is, as we, just to help the group get grounded in the discussion and keep focused, what I'd appreciate hearing is what expectations you have of one another as we go through these 3 agenda items. If we just go one by one and just hear what expectations you have of each other as we have this facilitated discussion today.
Ms. Giovanelli? What's your expectation?
I'm good with the timeline. I mean, I'm good.
Ms. Patrica?
My expectation is that we will follow the agenda, stay on topic, have open and frank conversations, and reach consensus.
Thank you. Ms. Fisher?
My expectation is that we follow the agenda, let the facilitator do the facilitating, and that we listen carefully and stay on the topic.
Thank you. Ms. Gittens?
My expectation, and this is just of the timeline right now?
Correct. Well, what, Mr. Cashman, can you please clarify what you're asking so Ms. Gittens can?
Yeah, and I'll ask it of both, by the way, and we'll go back. As one is just to help ground the discussion and keep us focused. And I've reviewed the agenda items. What expectations did you have of each other for this discussion?
Oh, okay. I mean, my expectation is that, I'm gonna pull this down. My expectation is that we will not only hear, but listen and appreciate differences of opinion.
Thank you, Ms. Gittens. Ms. Vaughn?
My expectation is we'll get it done.
Thank you. And Ms. Morgan?
Yeah, my expectation is that we'll follow the agenda. We will respect the role of the facilitator. We will listen. And as someone else said, we'll get the job done. Thank you.
Appreciate that. And is there, based on that, since I'll be facilitating, do you have any additional expectations of me as we go through this process? Ms. Giovanelli?
Giovanelli?
Just keep us on track. Thank you.
Okay.
Ms. Patrica?
My expectation is that you would keep us on the agenda, keep us on topic, and be forceful if necessary.
Ms. Fisher?
Mr. Cashman, my expectation is that you will take the lead and carry us through this.
Ms. Gittens?
My expectation of us is that we listen to Mr. Cashman when he feels we need to turn a different direction to keep on task.
Thank you. Ms. Vaughn?
My expectation is that you will successfully guide us through this process.
And Ms. Morgan?
I'm trying to think what I can add. My expectation is that you will help us get through this. And that's it.
Okay. Thank you all.
Thank you.
The first agenda item we had was the rubric for scoring. There has, if I just ask if we could put up the rubric we had from August 2012, and we'll open it up to discussion. What we'd like to do is get to consensus as to the rubric we're all going to use for the interim superintendent hiring. So this was sent out, and would like to open the discussion to have some feedback. First, to start it and keep us focused, are there some things, as you see in the rubric, or you want in the rubric, that are just non-negotiable? These are the things that absolutely must be in the rubric, or these are things that cannot be in the rubric. Any non-negotiables you have as you think about what should be in the rubric? Up here, we'll just review. We have strength of the personality. You could see their presence, their voice, the command of language, and self-expression. If you go to the B, it's their professional characteristics. You see them listed there: preparation for superintendent's position, knowledge of superintendent's work, understanding of self, their values, beliefs, their knowledge and skills, and then an overall rating.
Ms. Gittens has,
Can you go back up to the top? When I read strength of personality, it's very, I always mix this up, subjective, objective, but what I'm trying to say, we can look at that so differently, and I would really like to hear from my colleagues about some of these, what their interpretation of some of these words are, because then we'll know how far apart we really are. Not that it's going to change how we look at the candidates, but to just kind of have an idea we're going to be off on this one. So even looking at strength of personality, I look at that as if we're, and this is when we're face-to-face, or this is on the application?
And I can have Chairperson Jordan speak to this. You're going to have the rubric with the applications.
correct. So we'll have the, thank you. So all of us will have the applications. And then this is kind of like what we did with the board attorneys. So we'll have the applications, and then we'll have the rubric. So that way, when you're going over the application, you can, I would use this for both, actually, for the in-person, once you've gotten to that person. Well, but we need to have this to hone in on the top three. So, or I say three, but 3, 5, 7, whatever it is. You need to have this so that way we can come up with who are those ones who really stand out to us, and where are we going with that?
If I may finish my comment then, the top section A, to me, is more when I'm physically seeing someone and listening to them. If I'm looking at their resume, it would be very difficult for me to discern their strength of personality or presence and all of that. So, which leads to the fact that we have one differentiation for the written resumes and another for personality, because that could really throw us off on numbers.
So I go back when you think then on the rubric, are there some non-negotiables or must-haves? These are the things you absolutely want to see in the rubric, so we're making sure we're capturing that here.
Can you
Yeah.
scroll down this one?
Command
Trika?
of language is essential for me.
What's that?
Command of language
yep.
is essential for me.
Okay. Thank you. Any other feedback on that? What else? Command of language.
Well, I wouldn't pull anything. I think they all belong there.
Ms. Vaughn?
Yeah, I agree, they all belong there for when we're doing the interview. I would say that somebody who appears in person will have a leg up on somebody who appears on Zoom with these things, especially presence.
Ms. Patrica?
Ms. Fisher had her hand up first.
Okay, so I think strength of personality is best determined when we do the in-person interview, for a variety of reasons, which I'll be happy to go into later. And so I would probably take that out of the application review. Just, that's my own opinion. It's difficult to determine personality.
And may I ask, what is the purpose of this rubric? Is this for us in our one-on-one interviews, or is it for us in the group interviews?
The rubric was, shall I speak?
Yeah, go ahead, Chairperson.
It's so that way we can, if we get 10, 12, 14, how do we come up with that number that we're looking for?
So this is just for resumes?
So, correct. So we need to have some kind of guide of, just as we did with the attorneys, how we came up with, the three of them. So it's a guide, it's a tool for us to use to help us get those ones who really stand out to us. So whatever this looks like is, we really need to make sure that it's something that matches, I guess, what their applicants are. So looking at the application and looking at the verbiage on here should match to bring out the best of those people, whoever they are. So that way, when we come, it not necessarily doesn't have to be the same one. When we do the in-person, that can absolutely be different, or you can use the same one. I'm going to leave that to Mr. Cashman's assistance on that.
Yeah, I'll weigh in and then I'll go to Ms. Fisher, then Ms. Vaughn. One of the things you're looking at this, and we're going to discuss this when we're picking the candidates, is you'll be using the rubric to determine how you're going to evaluate your top candidates.
So then, if that's the case, really the only one, to me, that's appropriate under strength of personality is command of language. The other three cannot be determined based on a paper review of qualifications.
Okay. Ms. Fisher?
Yes, and so I just wanted to mention, based on past experience, I've seen resumes and applications that were very strong and compelling. However, they were professionally done, or the person themselves didn't necessarily do it. So I still feel like I don't think I would use any of these when reviewing the applications to come up with the finalist.
Okay, and I'm just, if I may just jump in real quick, during our conversation when we were speaking, we wanted some kind of rubric, so when we went to HR to get the rubric, this was the last one that they had, because I know that Mr. Cashman had asked them if there was something that was more
More recent.
more recent, and this was the one that they had, so that's why we are looking at this to do whatever we need to do to make it right.
That's right. Ms. Vaughn?
Yeah, two things. One, if we use anything from this, strength of personality is not something that should be deleted. There shouldn't be any scoring there. It's like the title of 1 through 4 beneath. And I agree with Ms. Patrica, there's no way you can judge, really, command of language is the only thing that you can judge. This, I would like to see that whole top part gone from our initial rubrics when we look at the resumes and really focus on preparation, professional characteristics, the strength of the recommendations of the person, those kinds of things, and then include, of course, when we've narrowed it down, it's very important to have command of language and voice and self-expression and presence. In other words, is the person comfortable in a speaking situation? Because certainly the superintendent will have to do that. We have to imagine that person out in the community and having poise and presence and all of that. So I just really, I don't see how the top part even works for our step 1.
And I'll go to Ms. Gittens, then Ms. Fisher, and then we can open up, at the end it'll be all of you who would make that collective decision that it may make most sense for you to say we're going to have one as we're looking at the initial applicants, and then one as we're bringing in the finalists. So that's certainly something that'll be up to you to make a collective decision on that. Ms. Gittens?
Let me reiterate what I said in the beginning. I do not believe that this rubric is a rubric for a paper evaluation without a person being in front of you. This is characteristics that you have to see the person, hear the person, even the second part, professional characteristics and all that. I've had to review a lot of and narrow down candidates from hundreds of applications. And like Ms. Patrica was saying, the language is one thing. Are there errors in their resumes? Is it worded? Ms. Vaughn mentioned the references, that type of thing, and not this. This is fine for in front of someone. This is not a rubric for determining and narrowing it down to our final 3 to 5.
Okay. Ms. Fisher?
So then, I would think that when we look at the applications and the resumes, we would be looking for education, work experience, skills and competencies. And I think that the personality traits and the values will come out more in the personal interview.
Yes.
Thank you.
Ms. Giovanelli?
Yeah, and she actually just was going to, I don't see where experience is here at all. And I think, Ms. Patrica is correct, and I agree with her on that. The command of language would be the only thing we could look at prior to something with paper, so.
So, Ms. Fisher?
Yeah, so having been part of this in 2012, I would say that we really need to update this to make it more current and more applicable to today's needs and qualifications that might be preparation for a leadership position, but not necessarily focused on the superintendent's work, because I think that we are hearing a lot from our community and we're advertising nationally, and that someone who would be like a CEO of a company might not have been a school superintendent before, but may be a very adept leader and have experiences and education that lend itself to what would fill that role. So, yeah, I think we just need to tweak it a little bit.
We'll go to Ms. Gittens, and then what I'll do is we'll open it up to taking it just into bite-sized chunks. We'll first we'll put together a rubric or get your thoughts on a rubric specific to the initial applicants, and then a rubric for the in-person finalists. Ms. Gittens?
And that's what I was going to suggest. I have written down 4 areas: education, work experience, use of language, and references. And if we had a rubric showing those 4 things, basically, and whatever else anyone else thinks, that would be our tool for the applications. And I think it needs to be, clear and simple. So, those 4 things, whatever else, not more than, 5 things or so, 5 or 6. And then an area for a comment at the end.
So it's education, work experience, use of language, and references.
And references.
Yeah.
Other feedback? So if I may build on your suggestions here, taking the first part and just looking at the initial applicants, so a rubric to evaluate the initial applicants, not the finalists. So if we'll take one at a time, we have education, work experience, use of language, and references. Some additional thoughts to build on? Ms. Vaughn?
Awards and recognitions.
Okay. Yeah, Ms. Fisher?
Yes, so looking at the ad where we put the culture fit, as the interim superintendent of schools, you will. So I think that we need to maybe coordinate our rubric with the essential job functions and career qualifications that we mentioned in the ad. I would think that someone who is applying and sending a resume will do that.
Okay. So making sure we're aligning it with the job description.
Yes, please.
I think you're right, Ms. Fisher. I think that people look at the advertisement and then they fit their resume to fit the job. That is very true.
Ms. Giaminelli?
And I was just curious what the board feels like where does the public come in at this point? Or are we just going to, do they have any public comment or, input at all at this point or do we weed through and not allowing that process, part of it, being part of the process, the public? Does that?
Yep.
So,
Go ahead, Attorney.
Ms. Giovanelli, there will be public comment because at some point you're going to have some action meetings where the public's going to be able to come in and completely give their take on these different candidates. You'll also, I believe, the chair is going to set up some briefings where the public will also be able to speak on the agenda items, so there will be opportunities.
Okay, we haven't talked about that, so I was just curious.
And we are also getting, remember, and I know I've received quite a few, and I'm sure we all have, if I have, regarding the people's
Webpage.
thoughts and comments from the website. They've definitely been coming in.
Right, but they won't see they won't see the resumes, or will they? I guess that's the question. I guess. I mean, what are we going to put on the website? I think we need to determine that as well. I mean, right? I mean,
That will come before us when we do when we pick the candidates for, that will be interviewed. That will be done in another meeting. So that information will be here, just as we did when we did the attorneys, where we had the meetings, people could come in and here it wasn't a closed session. Everybody could be a part of that.
Can I just say, basically, it will be on our agenda. We would say that of that meeting, and then we have the applications on there on the agenda that everyone can see.
I may, building off what Ms. Giovanelli just spoke to, is what is your sense for each of you? What's your sense on what the community would want to see in this rubric? First for the initial, and then we can look at this, the second part in person. But what's your collective sense on what the community would want to see in the rubric?
for me, I think it's just being transparent. Whatever how that looks, it just, we need to put it out there and be very transparent. So if it's going to be, if it's the 5 applicants from that, then I think maybe we should post that their names at least, and then people can research on their own. I don't know. I mean, that's why I was I'm really putting this back on the board as a whole to make that decision.
So one is, in terms of the process, if I'm hearing you correctly, one is to make sure that we have, that you have a transparent process in terms
Yes.
of how the applicants are moving forward.
Yes.
So we'll make sure we note that. Are there additional characteristics that you see the community would like to see in the rubric? Do you have a sense of what you think the community would like to see in the rubric for these candidates? Ms. Morgan?
And I think probably communication, how they communicate and their ability to, their comfort level interacting with different segments of the community. I don't know how you demonstrate that in a resume, but I think we should be looking for professional relationships, that kind of thing.
You, Ms. Patrica?
Strong, proven C-suite experience.
I didn't understand that.
Strong, proven C-suite experience.
You defined it?
Executive level experience, C-suite chiefs or above, chief executive officer, chief officer experience in an organization.
And so if we had under professional relationships would also be, that would be specific to communication. Communication would be the professional relationships, comfort interacting with different groups. Is that correct? Any other Mrs. Gittens?
Again, what Ms. Fisher was saying, we have to measure this against what we put in the ad already as well. And if that was not in there, then we need to be careful that we have not weeded out people. And I'm not sure about that one.
All right, we're going to see if we could bring the ad up so we can also look at that and make sure we're including that. Is this the ad? So we'll see, and then we'll go back to the language here. So can you all read that as the interim superintendent? We have that. As the interim superintendent of schools, you will lead the administrative, instructional, and support staff of the Lee County Schools through the strategic plan by designing, developing, and maintaining the best possible education, programs, and services for our students. And then we have where all candidates would submit, and let's see the career qualifications. Master's degree or higher, documented history of progressive responsibility in an executive, as an executive in the public or private sector. And then you've got the essential job functions, if we just leave that up.
And then Mr. Cashman and Ms. Vaughn can speak on this as well. So you have, this is the ad that went out, but then there's a link that you click on, and that would take you then to the job description of the superintendent, which is a 4-pager. That gives you a multitude of essential job functions in that job description, because that is part of this. It's not all written out there, of course, but the link will take you there to the job description.
Perfect, and we've got that now.
There's a lot more on there.
Yeah, it's a lot. That's on the screen now as well.
Yeah.
Ms. Fisher?
Ms. Stillwell, can you make that a little bit larger, please? Thank you. Okay, perfect.
See what the major function is on that. Provide leadership in directing the administrative, instructional, and supportive staff towards planning, developing, and maintaining the best possible education programs and service. That's the main function on that one.
So that's the same.
So as looking at this, I'm going over some of the words you had suggested: education, work experience, skills, competencies, the use of language, their references, awards and recognitions. This is going back to, we want to make sure we've included things that are aligning to the job description. And then communication, comfort interacting with different groups, and strong C-suite experience. But, and I apologize if we bring it right back to the job description. Nellie?
I think we have to be careful using a terminology of C-suite when I don't think
Yeah.
the community would even know what that means. And I think that's excluding and not being inclusive. And I don't think that's a terminology that we should be using. We should be more, it should be defined,
Okay. I
please.
think it was strong C-suite experience, but in the ad, I think it speaks to executive experience.
Right, and the ad doesn't say anything about a C-suite. I mean, so that's my
Okay.
point.
Any other feedback?
Ms. Gittens had something.
Ms. Gittens?
And I agree with Ms. Giovanelli that the C-suite is kind of very specific. And, perhaps they would know it if they're an executive, but we're talking about an executive position. We mentioned those words. So if we could say that. And I do say, most people are going to look at the ad, they're going to look at the job description. I know when I used to teach people how to do resumes and that type of thing and applications, you look at the verbs and the adjectives and you look for what it is they want, and that's how you set up your application and your letter. So I'm sure they will go through not only the ad, but also, like you mentioned, the job description. So.
Ms. Vaughn?
Yeah, and I was going to say, as we're doing these, a couple keywords came to mind. Where's our list? I guess we have too
Oh,
many
now
pages here.
we'll go back to
But-
listen.
But something key in the ad was progressive, the progressively, how was that phrase to remember?
Executive.
Progressively higher level. What is that? Because I think that's progressive responsibility. I think that's a good marker, because I've seen people that kind of plateau early and don't go anywhere. And the other thing, have we put leadership? Because a huge part of this is leadership and supervision, and that would go under probably the work experience. But, in our kind of, as we have our little mini paragraphs, our little mini descriptions of each item, we can put like work experience and have several subcategories under that. But certainly evidence of leadership and supervisory experience are essential.
Thank you. Chair Jordan?
I was just, because I'm looking at, thank you, Ms. Vaughn, because I was looking at where it says, knowledge and administration, supervision, curriculum, business affairs, personal management, managing of people, and also the ability to work with diverse group of people. That's really important as well.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's big.
Extremely important.
And actually, to me, I'm not sure where that would fall in, being able to work with the board. So have you ever worked with a board, because essentially we are their boss, so they have to be able to work with us. That's important.
Can I add to that? I agree with you, because there are some executives that have worked in a silo and not had to report to a board or work with, this type of entity. So I totally agree with that.
Well, let's go, thank you. Let's go through the list, and specifically for this section, we'll focus on the applicants coming in, and we'll evaluate them with these categories for the initial, and then we'll narrow it down to that 3 to 5, which we'll have a discussion on in the next agenda item. But first, if we could go through here and say, these are the ones we absolutely want in the initial screening, and then we could use the same and add, if we need to, that will go into, here are the ones that we're going to use for the finalists. So if there's no additional input, let's start with using the words that are above. Are there any that stand out as non-negotiables? We must have them. Yeah, Ms. Giovanelli?
Work experience, I think that's really huge. The leadership is another thing. We really don't have executive leadership, and I think that's, people can be supervisors of many things, but, have they worked with boards and so forth like that? I mean, that's going to be a key element, that it's someone that can work with 7 different personalities, so a board experience is important, I think.
Okay. In the ad, it discussed, again, it was brought up here, progressive responsibility as an executive in private or public sector. Does that belong in that section there under work experience? Yes. Yeah. So maybe just as I'm learning here, thumbs up or down? Thumbs up?
Mm-hmm. And can I make a comment on that one?
Yep.
I don't know which.
So this was specifically under work experience. What I was asking is, when you brought up here progressive responsibility as an executive in the private or public sector, would that also go under work experience as you're evaluating this candidate?
Yeah.
Okay. Ms. Gittens, you had another comment?
It's further down.
Okay.
Oh, wait.
So any other, just first let's start with others that you think are just non-negotiable, they must have, so we could start narrowing it down to a list and keep it to a manageable rubric. We could do one at a time, and if I'm learning correctly, the thumbs up, you're agreeing, thumbs down, you're not agreeing, and sideways, as I understand, is still a yes, but you can go either way, correct? So we'll try to get to thumbs up or thumbs down. So if we look at the use of language and the command of language, sound like they're the same, but use of language, thumbs up that should be in there?
Well,
What,
use of language, written language, because again, we're not.
the words that were used were...
Written words, because we won't have the opportunity to speak to them prior to this, so.
Correct.
Written words?
Written language.
Okay, written.
Okay.
Language expression?
Okay.
As long as we understand what that means,
Yeah.
it's not verbal.
Okay. Language expression, it's a must-have. Any thumbs up? Any thumbs down? Any sideways? Not sure? Okay. We may go back to that. References, is that an absolute in this first round? Thumbs up that you want to see the references first before you're even deciding on them? Okay. Thumbs down? Sideways? Okay, how many thumbs up again? All right, 1, 2, 3,
I'll go with you.
4, 5. And how many thumbs sideways? Okay. All right, I think we have 5 to 2. Okay.
So, Mr. Cashman, at this point, it may be a good idea to try to figure out why the 2 sideways are sideways and what can be done to get them on board.
Yeah. Could you speak to that? Yes. Ms. Fisher, you want to go first?
I would wait until we choose the finalists before we check references.
Okay.
I mean, because that could be, if we have 15 or 20 applications, that could be pretty cumbersome work for whoever's going to be doing it.
Yeah. Ms. Morgan?
Yeah, well, okay, so there's 2 ways. One is the references that they attach to their application.
Right.
The other is the references that we seek after we approve the application. I don't think we can be asking for references until we narrow down the field. I guess my question about attached references is, how telling really is it? Which is why that's why I went sideways. I mean, if you all want references, but you want to see references, fine. I think we'll just get from some people, we'll just get a slew of personal stories, and I don't think that's really relevant, but.
Yeah, I'll go to Ms. Patrica.
I'd like it to say professional references.
Okay. And then just on this, one of the questions I have is, in the ad, in the application, was it requested that people turn in their references?
I don't think it was. Ms. Spahn, do you recall that?
I don't recall.
I'll have to go back and find that one.
So that may be something just to, consider, that reference, if they're not going to be available, maybe something just to consider.
Right there. at the top of the page, provide recommendations upon, is that it?
No.
No, we didn't ask for them.
No.
So
A
we.
lot of times
yeah,
that's
we didn't
upon
ask.
request.
It's just their cover letter and resume. So maybe, I don't know, if we want to go back and look at that for the ones who we choose, the last ones, and then we then would require that because we're going to have to vet them anyway. I don't know if that's,
Yeah, Ms.
I think
Patrica?
the point is well made. If it's not in the job description, then it has to come out.
Okay.
We can't evaluate people on something we didn't ask them to provide in the job.
So the only two things we're seeing that we did ask is an electronic copy of the resume and their cover letter.
correct.
And then professional references can be part of the rubric for the interviews.
So just going through that again, based on looking at new information, is everyone okay if we look at the references afterwards at a later date? Once we have, okay. Anyone who's opposed, any thumbs down? Okay, thank you all for working through that. What other pieces do we have here to go over? Is the awards and recognitions, is that a must-have for your initial screening of these applicants? Just thumbs up that you must have them? Thumbs down?
Again, that's another one that's not, we didn't request.
It was not asked for. That's right.
But they probably will put them in there anyway.
Isn't that, I haven't written a resume in a really, really long time, but aren't some of these things just pretty standard?
You may have candidates who put that in there. It's not, it may not have been a requirement. Most candidates would bring in their work experience. They may or may not have put the awards and recognition.
But, I'm not saying, like I was Little League Coach of the Year, but I'm talking about professional, wouldn't, like if you were chosen, all right, for an administrator, I was chosen top state administrator in Ohio or something like that. Wouldn't that be something? I mean, you're selling yourself in a resume. I don't know. I think it should count for something.
Okay. We have Ms. Gittens and then Ms. Giminelli.
But then again, the standard is if we didn't specify, and it will be for some people, but are we really going to put someone on the short list if they didn't? Because there's also, people are told keep it short and sweet, and you can add all the rest of the stuff later on. So they may not choose to have a 3-page resume that has all of that on it, but just to give you the generic highlights.
Ms. Giminelli?
One of the things that, when I was saying leadership, working with boards, I also thought that it's important to have maybe parliamentary expertise or, experience, Robert's rules and that kind of thing. I don't know if that's important to the board, but that would be something that would be like a plus or a check on a rubric for me. Like that's not required, but, it's a plus.
Okay. Ms. Fisher?
Yeah, I still think that we need to, first of all, keep the rubric simple, and I think we need to make sure that it correlates with the ad. And one thing that, like the use and command of written language and the ability of working with a board, et cetera, that would be inherent when they give you their work experiences.
Yeah.
And I like the line that we put in the ad that says documented history of progressive responsibility as an executive in the public or private sector. I think that says it all in a nutshell. And I think another thing that we didn't put in the ad, really, we didn't, except for interpret the purpose of actions and needs of a school system to the board, staff, students, and public, we didn't make any indication that this person has got to be involved in the community.
Yeah.
And so hopefully then that will be evident in the resumes, that they've had some community involvement and experience that way, that they would have had experience interacting with diverse groups. And so I think that that sentence encompasses the C-suite experience, et cetera. So I think we can simplify it if we just stick with what we asked for.
Okay.
Yeah, because remember, we, at the end of that, because this is an ad, so the ad, you pay by the line, you pay by the word. So this is an ad, and that's why at the end, Ms. Vaughn, they had put that link to go so that they could get a more in-depth view of what that looks like by going to that site.
Okay. And we'll start narrowing down. We got Ms. Patrica and then Ms. Morgan.
So that phrase that's been repeated frequently is exactly what I meant by C-suite experience, so you can remove that. And I do like the ability to work with a board as being sort of a subcategory of that, because it is an important area of evaluation. So it might not have necessarily been placed in the ad, but working with this board is an essential skill set for anyone, and if you've never worked with a board before, that would sort of jump off the page for me. So I think it's important for us to write it on the rubric in order to score it.
Highlight that one then, highlighting the ability and documented history of working with a board.
I think parliamentary experience is redundant with ability to work with a board, because if you're working on a board, you're following some kind of process, some kind of rules process. So to me, that would be a little bit redundant, but if Ms. Giovanelli feels more comfortable having it up there, I can certainly live with it. And the
Ms.
same is
Giovanelli,
true
are
for
you-
what Ms. Vaughn just said about, what was it that you said about not references, awards. If you feel comfortable having that on there, I can most definitely live with it.
I know Ms. Morgan, you're next, and then we'll go Ms. Giovanelli.
Yeah, so, yes, I was going to talk about the parliamentary experience also. I think that's too narrowly structured. I think, what you just said, Ms. Patrica, that experience working with a board, you have a process, a way of work. And I think when you go outside the state of Florida in a public education setting, you don't see Robert's rules as a formal way of work like you do here. So I would not include that.
Ms. Giovanelli, you want to respond, and then Ms. Fisher?
And I initially said, working with board, but I did narrow it down, but only because I think it would be a plus, it's not required. So so I would agree, because what I initially said, so.
Comfortable if it was phrased around the experience with the board as opposed to parliamentary experience?
Yeah, yes, I'm fine with that. I mean,
Okay.
absolutely.
Ms. Fisher?
Yes, but it is indicated in the ad, because under essential job functions, the third, fourth, fifth, and sixth bullet all refer to working, administering and supervising programs and services provided by the board, and see that the policies and directions of the board are executed, serve as secretary and executive officer, et cetera, et cetera. So that whole part of essential job functions certainly indicates that they have to be working with the board, that's an expectation.
So on here, we have ability to and documented history of working with the board. Is everyone comfortable with that? Would any suggestions on wording that differently for the rubric? That should capture what you're speaking to in terms of experience working with the board. What do you think, Ms. Vaughn?
I really think it's important, because I've worked
Yeah.
with boards running country clubs. I've had 100 board members, that were my bosses, but they still have to understand that there's 7 of us that they have to work with. So different boards are different depending upon what the situation is. So that, to me, it needs to definitely be in here, for sure.
Okay. Ms. Vaughn?
Okay, and I had an awful thought just now, and I don't know why I hadn't thought of it sooner. I'm wondering how many of our applicants are smart enough to be tuning in today as we construct this rubric. As a teacher, whenever we gave a project or an assignment, the rubric was out there. There's nothing that can be done now, but just saying. we may have a lot of different looking resumes for people that are turning it in later from what was turned in at first, so.
Well, it certainly fall in line with what you all were committed to in terms of being transparent.
Well, I don't know why we
It's a
didn't
good-
think of it.
yeah, it's a good
And I feel
comment.
stupid for not thinking of it because all those years as a teacher. But I think we need to, because of that, we need to be maybe a little vague in some things so that people that have already turned in their applications won't be screwed, put it very bluntly.
Ms. Patrica?
I think that this is 100% appropriate for the hiring of a public chief executive officer for a school district. I think that I, too, created rubrics for assignments for my students, and it allows each of the 7 of us to be completely objective in the evaluation, and it takes the personality out of it. And, I mean, if they can't follow the rubric, then that speaks volumes. And if they can follow the rubric, whether I like them or not, then they rise to the top. So
I'm not
I mean,
understanding
I would
what
never,
you're saying based on what I said.
I'm sorry, I was speaking.
Yes, you were, sorry. Go ahead.
I was interrupted and I lost my train of thought. Thank you.
You said for your students.
My students, I never gave an assignment that I didn't give them the rubric. I never gave them an assignment that they didn't know exactly what they needed to do to earn an A, a B, a C, a D, an F. And that is the purpose of a rubric. Clear expectations right up front. And I can't mark somebody down on a rubric because I don't like the way they look or the way they smell or their personality. It is all very strictly set out and set forth to take the personality out of it and make it objective.
Great, thank you. Ms. Dupree Bruno?
So what I'm understanding Ms. Vaughn to say is that we are now receiving applications, resumes, and cover letters. And this rubric is being developed now. So the individuals who have already submitted their applications and resumes did not have the opportunity to have this rubric. And those that are watching, obviously, are watching it being developed. Is that what you're saying, Ms. Vaughn?
That's what I'm saying. That's why I didn't understand what Ms. Patrica was saying, because I'm not arguing against a rubric. Absolutely, we need a rubric. But it just, that horrible thought just struck me, and that's all I can say. We're 7 of us, and it didn't strike any of us, apparently, and it worries me.
And I know we have a few, and I'll go to Ms.
We need
Morgan, Ms. Fisher, then Mrs. Gittens. And I know it was brought up, a few times that we should be following the description and the ad that was put in place to make sure that the rubric follows. I know that was suggested. Ms. Morgan?
Well, that was my comment. There's nothing up there that is not asked for. No expectation is stated up there that is not clearly stated in the application process or in the job description. So I can't look at that and say that somebody who's seen this versus somebody who hasn't seen this has a leg up. I don't see it.
Ms. Fisher?
Yeah, so we're already receiving applications based on this ad.
That's right.
And the criteria here. And the only difference between this and the job description would be that documented history of progressive responsibility as an executive in the public or private sector. So some of those more specific to the superintendent and education experience in the job description, they'll see that, but that's not what we're asking for here. So I still say we need to stay consistent with this because it's out there. And yes, and in the future, I hope that our planning in advance is to coordinate all of these pieces, which typically would be done by our HR department.
Ms. Patrica?
Ms. Vaughn, I misunderstood, and I appreciate Attorney Dupree Bruno's clarification for me. I hear what you're saying, and I don't think there's anything that stops a candidate from resubmitting. If they submitted a resume or a cover letter and they view this meeting and they feel like they can strengthen that resume or cover letter, they can send that in and say, please consider this one and not the one that was sent on such and such a date.
Ms. Dupree Bruno has her hand.
Well, I was, okay,
Go ahead, Ms. Gittens, because maybe my comment's not necessary. Go ahead, Ms. Gittens.
that's okay. Okay, what I was going to say is, it's going to sound repetitive because initially when we started this process, my comment was, this is where we should have started, is looking at these documents, deciding what we're looking for, and then taking this and doing the ad. We did not do that with the interim piece. And like I said, we need to look at what is it we want overall. And many of you have said that's the same thing, the interim or whatever, it's all superintendent, so we should start with this. And I believe this is going to help us going forward, looking for the permanent superintendent, because we've got the building blocks as to what we're looking for, and we go forward. And I can just tell you, if I was looking for a job, I'd be listening to this on my phone right now and taking notes and deciding, okay, do I need to send in an addition to, if I've already sent it in, can I send in an additional piece? People, I think, the type of person we're looking for is savvy enough to do that. And that's why we have to stay with the job description and the ad that we have out there. If the job description is plucked from if the ad comes from the job description, then we're fine. They've got all the information they need to answer, and now we're taking from those documents what specific things we're going to evaluate.
So if we come back to this and making sure that our rubric, to all your points, then we're staying consistent with the job description and what was put in the ad. We want to make sure, based on all this feedback, that that stays consistent in the rubric. We have education, we have work experience, we have the progressive responsibility. Yeah, did I get that? Working with the board? So working with the board, we'll just highlight that. And then the documented history of the progressive responsibility as an executive in the public or private sector. If we highlight those two, the documented history and then the ability to, then we'll just look at these to see, did we include the right items for the rubric? Is there anything that needs to be added or revised in any way? This would be the initial applicants that will be coming in by the 21st. So we have education, work experience, and under work experience, documented history of progressive responsibility as an executive in the public or private sector, and ability to, and documented history of working with the board. And then the last one is use and command of the written language. Any changes, revisions, or Mrs. Gittens?
And will we have this laid out in rubric fashion?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Patrica?
So I will be looking for things like gaps in employment history, frequent job changes, and whether there are any explanations for those kinds of things. Do we include that in a rubric or no? I'm hearing no. Okay.
May I comment on that?
Yeah, Ms. Gittens.
In my estimation, it's already there. When we say progressive responsibility, in other words, are you moving ahead? If you were the supervisor of a department and a year and a half later you became, if you were assistant supervisor, a year and a half later you're supervisor, in 2 years now you're one of the executives, that's progressive. You've changed in less than 2 years, but it's progressively moving you up.
Fisher?
So, and the final piece on the ad is the contract length, which is 6 months with monthly extensions as needed. So we're asking for a short-term employee here who we are saying would not be eligible then to apply for the more long-term superintendent position. So I think that that's another consideration. And I think in today's business world, we have people in executive positions who do move around a lot because they have progressive experience and they move up. I mean, I think that the business world is not like it used to be where someone got a job and stayed there 30 or 40 years. That's, that was from my era, but now today it's a different story. And I hope that we are going to attract applicants who have some energy and that kind of a motivation that they dress up their own resumes by varied experiences with the different sections of the community.
Ms. Vaughn, and then
Well,
Jordan.
as we look at, for instance, the progressive experience, 1 through 5, we would have something like, yeah, this is exactly, or to address Ms. Patrica's point, a 1 might be jumps around many different companies, we're going to have our write-ups of the 1 through 5 for each of these. So do you think that would come under that? Now, documented history of working with the board, have we asked for that in the job description, documented history? Yeah. Or are we?
No,
we didn't. So how is that going to show up in a resume?
Chair Jordan, were you saying?
I'm just asking, maybe somebody has a way to put it in a resume, or, yeah.
Is there a comment on that?
Well, I'm sorry, did you say how would they put that in a resume?
Yeah, how do we, if we just said we're going to use only things from the job description, a documented history, do we have that in there, documented?
I don't know about, it doesn't say document, but in the job description, so if they were to go to the job description,
Yeah, I'm
the
going
job
back to
description
the
does have that in there, in the job description about it, the essential job function, and it does have a lot of stuff pertaining to the board.
Okay,
So
but maybe we should phrase that differently,
perhaps,
like ability to administer, execute programs of a board or something like that.
And in the job description, it does say,
It mentions board, but
Serve as a secretary.
instead of saying documented history, picking out some of the words from the actual ad.
and it's a,
Proven experience of providing,
so presume,
Did you want
Just
like
to suggest, just a
proven
suggestion.
experience providing advice and counsel to the school board? Or history of providing advice?
That's what's in there a couple of times.
that works.
Yeah, I'm just saying,
why don't we put that in there for now so we
language
can go through that? We'll go through that. Ms. Fisher?
Okay, so the link to the job description, that's not the job description of the interim. The essential job functions in the ad are more the job description of what we're expecting at this point. And so I still think we need to keep it simple. And how about ability to work with a board? I mean, that,
Get rid of document.
Okay.
we didn't ask for a documented history.
Right.
And I do think, again, in the work experience and using those subdivisions of leadership and supervisory experience, that may be indicated in the resume of the person who submits the application.
Let's put the ability to work with the board for now. We'll take a couple more comments, and then let's see if we can agree for this section on these. And then again, it would be a 5 scoring system rubric. Chair Jordan, did you have a comment? And then Ms. Gittens?
No, I'll just wait, because I just wanted Mr. Pri Bruno to, thank you, I'll just have her mention about the interim position, and if someone were to try, that received this, and then
Applying
reapply for the other.
full-time.
So
so I think the
and we
board,
can speak about that
Yeah.
after this is over,
after this is over? Okay.
after we're finished
Okay, why
on this
don't
topic.
we could finish this topic first, then Ms.
I
Gittens?
just want to finish, I want to stay on task.
Now, Mr. Cashman, I just want to check the time And just to alert you about the time, because we are about an hour and 15 minutes or so on this particular topic.
Okay. So what we'll do is hear from Ms. Gittens, and then we'll finalize these words here that we're going to have in the rubric. Ms. Gittens?
Okay, just very briefly, ability to work with the board is very vague, and I can put on my application that I worked with the board. You don't know how that relationship was until you talk with me about it and get more experience. So I think that that ability to work with the board is kind of out there. You won't be able to see that from just the paper.
Okay. Do you want to have that in the interview itself?
In the actual
Okay, in the actual interview. So just have that in this section. So for the, Chair Jordan?
I'm going to say, I think not. I think that if you're applying for this position, you pretty much know that you're going to be working with the board, whether you're, and I think that that's important, that they understand that fact that they will be working with the board. So if I was doing a resume, I'm going to say that I've had 100 board members, or I'm going to make sure that you understand that because I know you're my employers, I'm going to hone in on that. And so I think that's, we have to have that somewhere. I don't care where it's at, but I just know we need to have it there.
That's why I was saying to put it in once we've selected people, then in that final, in the interview process, definitely. But on paper, you don't know whether I was adversarial with all those 100 people or if I got along with them or not.
That's true.
That's my point, so.
Ms. Vaughn?
I don't think we're keeping in mind that for every topic we put here, we're going to have, unless we decide on 1 through 3, but that we're going to have those 1 through 5 and the descriptions. I mean, we've really not, sorry to say, we haven't gotten that far, and I'm wondering who's going to write these descriptions? I mean, what, use of, all right, we all said use and command of written language. On an English paper, I would put frequent grammatical and usage error through 5 mature style and, vocabulary or something like that. I just don't see that many things that we have identified that we can put those 1 through 5 descriptors underneath. So we really haven't gotten very far in this. And let's face it, we have to have enough of these that we won't all have everybody making a 47 out of 50. I mean, does that make sense? I saw Lauren shaking her head, but it makes sense to me. We have to have enough descriptors so that we are going to have significant differences in the scoring of these people.
It does. Ms. Morgan, and then we'll.
Yeah, so I think we
finalize
do need to reference ability to work with the board, and I absolutely understand that we may not know what the nature of that relationship has been and that person's work experience, but we need to know whether or not they have worked with multiple bosses. And in the rubric, it can say clear evidence of work with the board or unclear evidence of working with multiple employers, and that can be the rubric. But I think that has got, for me, that's critical, because we are not an easy board to work with, and somebody who's inexperienced is going to really struggle with us.
Ms. Patrico, and then Attorney.
So it's my understanding I don't even remember who Ms. Vaughn, it's my understanding that we're going to provide this direction, and then it will be up to Mr. Cashman to facilitate the work with staff. And they'll come back to us with the actual language of the rubric. That's my understanding. I mean, we never sit at this table and wordsmith things like rubrics, or, I mean, that's not something that we do as a board. So I think we're providing them direction, and I think that the statement of work that Mr. Cashman gave us was that he would he would be that go-between for us with staff. This is what the board expects, put something together, bring it back to them for approval. That's my understanding.
Attorney Dupree Bruno?
I was going to suggest to Ms. Gittens, perhaps this would be, my recommendation would be to have it two parts, for example, with regards to working with the board. So you have the experience with working with the board that you can determine just based on the resume whether or not this person has worked with the board. And then when you have your interview process, then you can figure out the depth of that working with the board and how well that has happened in the past with that particular candidate. So maybe a two-step process.
So what I'd like to suggest in the interest of time, and you've put down these, and I can work with the staff, is that we have education, we have work experience, we have the progressive responsibility as an executive in the public and private sector, and then the use and the command of the written language. So if we have that in there, we can put that into a rubric. I can work with the staff to get a rubric back to you. I would ask Attorney Dupree Bruno then just the process that I should follow in terms of working with the staff and getting that information back to the board to review.
Yeah, so as you are developing them, we can forward it to the appropriate staff. I can take a look at it as well and then get it back.
Okay.
We'll work on that process.
Ms. Patrica?
And should our ability to evaluate communication and community involvement be part of the rubric? Is that in the job description that we put out there? I thought it was, but I don't have the job description.
There's quite a bit in the ad with regards to communication.
I'm sorry?
There's quite a bit in the ad with regards to communication.
So I feel like that needs to be part of the rubric as well as we look through these resumes, please.
Yep, we'll add that. Everyone okay with that? Thumbs up? And we're going to use this rubric to evaluate, the initial applicants coming in. Is there anything, any more that you want to add to this? We'll come back. Chair Jordan, we were sharing that I can work with the staff on putting a rubric together for everyone to respond to based on the categories that were chosen here, specific to picking the, narrowing it down to 3 to 5. In the next section, we're going to discuss narrowing it down to 3 to 5 in the scoring section on that. Is there anything more we want to add to this section here? And if not, is there anything more that we'd want to add to what we're looking at for in the final candidate interviews? If not, we'll just use this. So is everyone comfortable using this for both the in-person and the initial selection? Let me start with this. Thumbs up on using this first for the initial selection. We'll get a rubric together and turn it back into the board for your review. Okay, first thumbs up on that. Any concerns or thumbs down? Thumbs down. Ms. Vaughn, feedback?
I think I've given my opinion on it. I don't think there's enough on here. I don't think there's, for some of these, I don't think that the 1 through 5 are going to be descriptive enough on some of these. But I'm in the minority on it, so let's just.
Is there a suggestion you would offer? Another suggestion you offer?
My suggestion is we need more categories, because if we keep it, unless we have some real items that are going to differentiate among these candidates, I mean, education, what are we going to do? Yeah, they have an education and they have at least a master's degree. I mean, what?
Is there another category you'd suggest?
I mean, what does everybody suggest is going to be 1 through 5 under education?
Ms. Gittens has something. Ms. Gittens?
Yeah, I mean, I just feel when we look at education, we know that we have asked for at least a master's degree. And you can look at what is that in, if it's in motor mechanics, it's not somebody that's going to be at the top of your list,
So
so.
everybody gets a 5. Oh, sorry.
I can understand on that one. Can you scroll up, please, to the top? Okay, so education, and that, I think that's the beauty of the fact that there are 7 different people that will look at it with 7 different eyes, and then the cream will rise to the top. If we have conflict about 1 or 2, then we can have that discussion. How did you look at, what took you over the top or what didn't? I think these are pretty generic, which they should be, because we won't have all the other ways to look at someone. This is just looking at their resume.
Attorney Dupree Bruno?
I do think that there's a couple of things that the board should consider in the rubric. One thing I did not see is something that deals with budget, finance, or fiscal responsibility, what experience they have with budgeting, financing, and having a fiscal responsibility in their positions. I think that's definitely something that's in the ad and the job description. The other thing that I noticed in the ad and the job description was about policy development. So I don't know if this person has had some experience with policy development. It may not be school policy development, but some type of development in policy, as well as problem solver, which I also noted was in the ad and job description. Is there something in the resume that indicates that they have worked in some fashion in terms of problem solving? So those were the 3 things that came to my mind.
Ms. Vaughn, your thoughts on that? Would that help?
That's exactly what I was looking for, more categories, and categories that can be, 1 through 5
Right.
under it, with probably a 3 as, yeah, did it, but a 5, a focus on it, or something,
Yeah.
or something like that.
Right.
Ms. Giovanelli, was there more on that? Are you in agreement? Okay. So we'll add those categories too. Is everyone comfortable if we add those? The budgeting and financing, it's in line with, it would help differentiate. It's in line with the description. Policy development, problem solver. We have community involvement. So put that, is everyone okay with that?
Yes.
Thumbs up?
Yep.
Thumbs down? Okay?
Mr. Cashman, I would just say problem solver / innovation,
Okay.
because I see that as well in our ad.
Put that in there. So this is the list we'll put together. I'll work with the staff, if okay with you, Chair Jordan, and the rest of the board. I'll work with the staff on developing the rubric, the 1 through 5. We'll get it back. In the interest of time, I want to make sure we get it back so you can all. Attorney Dupree, Bruno, would we need a separate meeting for them to review it again? Otherwise, I'll just be using these categories and go 1 through 5 as we've done in the past.
I suspect we're probably going to have another meeting for the board to review it as a whole and approve, and we're going to have to do that relatively quickly. So offline, we can discuss that, Mr. Cashman, how we move forward with that.
Okay. Is there anything that anyone would like to add? If we look at this for, Mr. Giovanelli, we were going to share?
Well, I was just thinking, like, she made me think, when she said budget, then I started thinking about other aspects of the job, procurement or operations and construction. So that's the business aspect, I guess. I don't know. So that was just some things after she mentioned that made me think that about the
Okay.
budget, so.
Ms. Fisher?
Yes, so this candidate will not have to be an expert in every field, but I think if we asked for skills, knowledge, and competencies, then whatever they were able to relate to the essential job functions when they created their application and resume, they'll indicate that. And then we'll see, as we go through the resumes, what their skills are indicated under their work experience, what their competencies are, because usually people do put that in the one-page resume nowadays, that their special areas of expertise and experience.
Okay.
So I think if we were a little bit more global rather than to get into every single area, because this is a huge district with multiple departments jobs to be done, and the superintendent does not have to be an expert in all of that. The superintendent has to be the leader and be able to, have people around him who are the experts in each one of those fields. That's why we have our chief staff.
So we will take these, put this into a rubric for everyone to review. I'll work with attorney and with chair on coming up with a date that we could share this back with the group for your input, your approval.
Okay.
Am I saying that correctly, Attorney Dupree, Bruno?
That's correct.
Okay. Before the next two items we'll have is to go over how many candidates we're going to bring in, and then we'll go over the selection process. Chair, if okay, could we just take 5 minutes and then we'll regroup and get into the number of candidates?
That would be great, thank you.
Thank you.
So we break for 5.
then at the moment. They don't open it up until after.
Okay, thank you. We are back.
I don't go back to
And
it.
I will be now turning it back over to Mr. Cashman, and we're moving on to our next item.
Thank you. We have 2 agenda items remaining. The first is to determine if we're going to have 3 to 5 finalists, and then the second will be the process we're going to follow to bring on a firm to, for the recruitment of a permanent superintendent. Given the time, we'd have about 45 minutes for each, for each of the agenda items. So I'm going to open it up that the suggestion was that we have between 3 to 5. Given your interest in having a clear vision and staying focused through this process, we'll open it up in terms of thoughts on, is there a preference for 3, preference for 4, preference for 5, but it was put out there for 3 to 5. So just to hear some general comments, are there some suggestions from the board? Ms. Morgan?
My goal would be 3, but it really all depends on what the pool of applicants looks like. So I would say 3 to 5. I wouldn't cut it off at 3, but I would definitely cut it off at 5. But the goal to me would be 3.
Okay. Ms. Patrica?
I'd just like to say the fewer opportunities that we provide each other for points of disagreement, the better. So I lean in the direction of 3 with the understanding that 5, if we have the strongest application pool in the world, we're going to want to interview 5. But I lean toward 3 myself.
What other feedback, Ms. Fisher?
Yes. Sorry. I say 3 to 5 for those reasons.
Okay. Ms. Gittens? Ms. Gittens?
I go 3 to 5 for different reasons. I think iron sharpens iron, and that if I have an impression of one person and hear from colleagues, well, did you think about this? It does help. So I disagree with Ms. Patrica on any opportunity for us to disagree. I think that's necessary at times.
Other feedback?
Ms. Vaughn?
3 to 5.
I'm going to say 3, period. And because you get 3 quotes for most things in life, I think 3 is a good number. Ms. Giovanelli?
Any other feedback? Yeah, Ms. Giovanelli?
I'm 3 to 5 as well. Sometimes too much information could be too much, but I think in this situation that competition is good. So we want the best for our district, so.
So, Mr. Cashman, it would appear that we have a 3 to 5 recommendation for 3 to 5.
Yeah, I'm going to just do a thumbs up on that in terms of 3 to 5.
So I did get a little feedback with regards to the thumbs up, that the public is having a hard time seeing the thumbs up and processing what the actual consensus is. So if you want to just kind of perhaps just go down the row and just say, I'm in, I'm not quite in, or I'm out, just to help out.
In.
In 3 to 5, right?
We'll live with it.
Thumbs up.
In.
Thumbs up.
Thumbs up.
Okay. Anything else we need to go over in that agenda? So we're going to put a rubric together, and we're going to narrow it down, that the board will look to narrowing it down to a field of 3 to 5.
Well, I do have a question.
Oh, Chair
We're
Jordan?
saying 3 to 5, but what does that look like? So is it 4? Is it 5? Or is it 3? I mean, we have the 3 to 5, but how many are we all going to be looking for? I guess.
I saw Ms. Fisher, Ms. Gittens, and then Mrs. Jordan.
Okay, so I've been on several interview committees, and based on what the applications look like, I think we'll narrow it down, and it'll end up between 3 and 5 at the max.
And I totally agree that until we know the numbers that we get in, we may get a lot, and we end up saying there's a lot of really good ones, so let's choose 5, or we get a few, and it's easy to do it. So basically what we're saying, not more than 5, not less than 3.
Okay, any other comments? Yeah,
So
Ms.
no,
Morgan.
my comment would be, having done this in the past, typically, the scores settle things out fairly quickly. You'll know if you're cutting at 3, you know if you're cutting at 4, you know if you're cutting at 5. So I think, well, as Ms. Gittens said, I think we'll have a pretty clear idea of where we're going to
Thank you.
land once we see them.
And Attorney Dupree Bruno, there was a comment earlier when we were speaking to the rubric about the interim. Can you comment on that with the interim or the permanent, interim to the permanent?
So you had previously taken a consensus that the interim would not be able to apply for the permanent position, and that you had requested that that language be included in the interim superintendent's contract.
And then could you please clarify then, if I am the interim and I decide that, I don't care what you say, I'm going to apply for that, could you prohibit me from applying for that?
Person can definitely apply for it, but you as they'll be violating the contract terms, but you as the board would know that, and if you choose not to interview them, not to provide them with any type of review, then that's up to the board. The interim and the board can also go back and renegotiate if you want to, change the contract, add an addendum to it. That will be to the board's discretion, but based on your last consensus, you indicated that you did not want the interim to be the permanent, and you requested that language be added to the contract, and I would imagine that everybody would abide by the terms of the contract.
Ms. Fisher and then Ms. Gittens?
Yes, and right in the ad, it says in bold, the selected candidate will not be eligible to apply for the permanent superintendent position.
Ms. Gittens?
And my question about it, because I've heard from several in the community, and I don't know if this is the appropriate time, but we had a CSI meeting this week, and since we did not have a quorum to carry on regular business, we did have a discussion, and this was one of the topics. And I said that as the liaison, I would bring forward their comments, and one of the strongest comments was about the fact of having someone as the interim that could not apply to be the permanent superintendent. And I will read some of their comments, which was, they gave an example of the provost at FGCU, that while they're looking for a permanent person, that the provost that is currently there sits in and does the job. We had a discussion about succession plan, and I did mention that basically we have like 6 people in the succession plan, and so it makes it a little more difficult than just saying, you know, the assistant superintendent takes over until we find someone. They were questioning our process in doing that. They specifically said, though, for the permanent superintendent, they wanted a national search. And the question was that if we have someone in the temporary position that does a good job, and then we tell them they can't apply for the permanent. And my response was basically what we've been saying on the board, that it's up to the individual. It's in the contract, and you can decide if you want to do one or the other. And the question has come up, the legality of it, and I think Attorney Dupree Bruno has answered that we do have a contract, and if you sign the contract to be the interim, that's what's in there, and it would either have to be renegotiated or something like that. I'm hearing from people in the community, you can't do that, it's illegal to keep someone from applying, and that's why I wanted to bring that up. But the comments, I did say to the CSI team, advisory, that I would bring up their concerns, and I have presented them. And if Attorney Dupree Bruno could clarify the fact that we would not be in any legal peril if the person signs a contract as the interim that says they cannot apply for the other. So
So one, the board has made it very clear that this is an interim position and it will not turn into a permanent position. You've made that very clear in your votes. You made it very clear in your ad, and it will be, and you have also instructed me that when the interim contract is negotiated and drafted, there must be a clause in there that says that the interim person cannot apply for the permanent position. That will be included in that. Now, can we physically hold somebody back from sending in a resume? No, we cannot do that, but the board will know who is the interim person and most likely will not be reviewing that person's application unless there is some type of renegotiation or an amendment or the board decides that they want to do that. So it will be to the board's discretion. But at this point, the board has clearly instructed that they do not want the interim person to be the permanent person. You have a right to enter into any contract that you want to enter into, so long as it's properly negotiated and negotiated fairly. And that is very clear. Everybody's on notice that the board does not want the interim to be permanent. So I think that's very, very clear. I will make sure that it's clear to to the candidate that you choose, and you know, it will be fairly dealt with. So there are no legalities with regards to that, because you have the right to enter into a contract that is properly negotiated and that there's a meeting of the mind. So I think the board has really made the public on notice in terms of its intention.
And just finally, my personal opinion on this is not them, but that it's almost unfair to other applicants for the permanent to have someone that, you know, has an opportunity to show what they can or cannot do and then move into it. So that was my personal thought about it. Thank you.
Thank you for doing that. I just want to make sure, because I know that we had heard and have read, so we are listening to what the community is saying. So thank you for clarifying that. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you. Well, it sounds like we do have consensus. The number of finalists will be narrowed down to 3 to 5. If nothing further, I'll move us to our third agenda item.
Thank you.
So the third agenda item, the search firms for the permanent superintendent. And what we're looking for here is collectively as a board, the process you'd like to follow. I know that there were 3 you had a chance to review, who had shared their information, but the discussion here is to determine the process you'd collectively like to follow as a board. So with that, I'll open it up if there's some initial comments.
I'll go ahead and start something. So right now, for the national search, if anybody has any names or organizations, I know that we have received 3 thus far from different firms, and Ms. Roman has sent that out to you all. So we are, just as we're getting applicants for the interim position, we're getting applications for firms as well. So we, at this moment, and Ms. Roman, that is still correct, right? There's still just 3? So we have 3 firms that have put their names in, and I will tell you who they are really quick. Ray and Associates, HYA, and the Florida School Board Association. So those 3 are the 3 that, and you have received that information via email. It's in a document that she sent out to you all.
Ms. Gittens?
Well, I had brought this up before. How are we letting others know? How are we broadening that search? Are there professional organizations that everyone is associated with that we could just send a message out to, or what? Are we sending a blanket email or something to some of the online digital, you know, like, I can't even think of them right now, but I'm just concerned that we are making it too small of a search to find a firm.
Well, and right now it's right now that's what you're all collectively determining is the process you'd like to follow. So that will be up to the collective board to determine that.
Well, I would like to see it open similar to our other ad for the interim,
Okay.
and put out there nationally so that everyone is aware.
Okay, Ms. Vaughn?
Yeah, two things. First of all, in response to what Ms. Skitten said, we didn't even have, I mean, as soon as Dr. Atkins retired, the first search firm was emailing us. And it's my feeling that truly professional search firms, they're knowing this stuff. They're looking at, well, who's looking for an interim, and then I mean, it's out there. I don't think that we put out ads to find search firms, number one. Number two, I think before we actually select the search firm, we need to list our process, what we're looking for, and see, for instance, once we select the national search firm, I'm thinking that that search firm should, one important thing would be taking the transparency piece and helping us with webpage, how we advertise to the public, suggesting or even planning. I'm not sure, I've never been involved with this process before, but suggesting or planning the kinds of forums and meetings that we should have, and kind of outlining those things so that basically we find this professional firm and, you know, we say, we need this, we need that, we need this. Because if it's, you know, if they're doing a search for private industry, they're going to have to present to their board and people like that, but they're not like, you know, we are public. And so do they provide, and how well do they provide the kinds of things that we're going to need to put it out there, and to help us with a website to put it out there for our constituents. Mm-hmm. And then take a look at, well, how much would they charge us to do this, and what kind of experience do they have? How much would they charge us to do something else, and what kind of experience, and those kind of things. So I would list what we want from a firm, and then look at the firms that have already solicited it to us, and see, do they offer it? How much do they charge? What kind of experience do they have with that? And so that would be my suggestion. I don't think we advertise for the firm.
And so I think
They'll find us.
I think I've captured this correctly. One is, first thing we want to do is just to take, again, bite-sized chunks of this. First is the process you'd collectively like to follow to select a firm. And then as we get into that, then to your point, you know, Ms. Vaughn, then it would be, you know, making sure we outline a process, their experience, their cost, and it outlines, you know, the content that you'd like to see in their scope.
But that is part of the process. What I said is part of the process, because we need to know that the things we're looking for are things that they offer and they're experienced with.
Got it.
Okay.
Yep.
I just want to make sure that was understood.
Yep, I'm fine. And so, yeah, from our agenda, one is the process we want to follow is what we're talking about here. We want to talk about how they're going to be selected. Then we'll speak to what's expected of them, what do we want them to do, including their costs. But is there, we'll continue to build on this. Is there some additional feedback in terms of the process you'd like to follow to select a firm? Ms. Fisher and then Ms. Petricka?
Yes, so I would like to reach out to the American Association of School Administrators. They have periodicals and newsletters, and since we're doing a national search, I think that getting into their media kit would help us to attract people who might be interested in helping us with that.
Thank you. Ms. Patrica?
I'm going to repeat what I've said, I think, at every meeting. We are in a very luxurious position of being able to be deliberative and intentional in everything we do, and I believe that advertising for a national search firm should be part of that process. We should cast as wide a net as possible, and see what we get, rather than just waiting for people to come to us. I get that we're the 9th largest district in the state and the 32nd largest in the country, and people who are paying attention, but others might be waiting for a bid process or a solicitation to occur, so wide net.
Ms. Gittens?
And in the same vein, and I totally agree with that last comment, do we need and nothing major, but some type of rubric? What are we looking for in a firm? Should they be able to do this? Should we be able to stay within a budget? Their previous experience at doing this? What are 3 or 4 things that everyone agrees we need to have in a search firm?
And I believe that was also in line with Ms. Vaughn in terms of the criteria you'd look for in the firm.
Right, that's what I said, yeah.
Yep. Okay. So one, as I'm hearing, is having a wide net. And Ms. Fisher, you had said to reach out to that school. What was the name of it again?
American Association of School Administrators.
School administrators, okay. The other was the advertising for the national search in terms of getting the broad net out there.
Yeah,
Feedback?
I mean, I think they would cast the widest net. And when I looked, researched with National School Boards Association, they actually refer you back to your own state school boards association. And the other thing I think we need to look at as we vet these firms that are applying is their success rate. That, how are the people that they are finding doing in a position? And, we're calling this the permanent superintendent position, and we certainly hope that it will be a considerable length of time, because I will tell you from experience, and this is, again, my mini history lesson, but before 2003, we had a period of time where we had 7 superintendents in 9 years, based on the results of national searches. That was not a good time. We did not have consistency, we did not have stability, and it was a mess. People were just not feeling it. So I think that we need to really be, as Ms. Patrica said, deliberative and thoughtful, and take our time and make sure that as we attract candidates, we are looking at all of the issues that we really do need here, and that is with some consideration to the fact that our 2 longest seated superintendents have been members of this community, had a vested interest in the community, and I understand about the good old buddy system, and I do understand about that, but this community is bigger than that now, and we certainly have a lot of talent in this community, so we don't want to, in going national, we don't want to eliminate what might be the best choice for the students and the community of Lee County.
Okay. Ms. Vaughn?
All right, first of all, I don't feel that it was appropriate to give a little commercial for the local people around us. They all know if they want to apply, and I don't think it's relevant, the way things happened 18 years ago. This is very different time from 18 years ago. And
Absolutely.
that was a time before a lot of social media. Okay. The other thing is well, let me just ask this. Since you're, Mr. Cashman, since you're in the business, is it usual to advertise for a search firm, or is it more like they contact us and then we use Google to see if there's somebody else that we want to vet? What's the typical?
Well, you'd have to, again, share some of the experience you've had in the school system. I mean, in different industry I've had where we reached out to several search firms who were the bigger firms to put a proposal together based on the criteria that you're speaking to.
But how did you come up with those firms?
They would have been known firms.
All right, so known for, so you
But
weren't
I will share with you,
expecting,
and I
weren't
was-
expecting
It was actually, I would
paid
share.
and advertised to look for those firms, though.
Yeah, and then share from my experience, and again, it may not be relevant here, is I've had experience where we've reached out, and we've had companies who've reached out here, who've reached out directly. So, for the group here, what I'd suggest is you all come up with a collective decision how you'd like to move forward, whether, we could take a vote of it, whether you'd like to advertise, whether you'd like people to reach out to you, or if there's some bigger known firms, then we can reach out directly and include the criteria you're speaking to so they know what they're responding to. Ms. Gittens?
I'm thinking, you have down there, look for firm success rate. I'd like to add scope of services and cost as three of the things that we could look at as far as differentiating between different companies.
So okay, and we'll make sure including that. And I'll step back for a moment and make sure including what we'd like to for this discussion. One as an outcome is to have a recommended process we're going to follow to bring in the firm, whether it's advertisement, we're reaching out, just that this group makes a collective decision, the process we'd like to follow to pick a firm, or actually to select a firm in terms of sharing a proposal. And then if we have time, then we could speak to what criteria would we want to make sure is included in there before we even put the word out. Chair Jordan?
Yes, based on just the three alone that have sent these to us, we didn't solicit them, they sent it to us. And all of them have some really good information in here, suggested process and timelines. But what I thought was interesting in the one I was looking at, the references, like the superintendent search, their searches were for like schools of 0 to 2,500 or 15,000 plus. So I think we need to make sure that it looks like they're smaller districts. So I think that would be something that might be, if you're looking for a superintendent that can handle this amount, but we're really looking for somebody that can handle this.
Right. Yeah, and that would certainly go under the criteria. That's Ms. Patrica?
So we're a huge school district, and I would think most people in the industry know, for example, when we're going to be building a school. And yet we still put out, we still engage in a bid process. We still put out what we're looking for and allow anyone to come in and bid on that. And I feel like that's a process that we as a board need to follow in terms of a national search firm.
Yeah. Ms. Gittens?
And I agree, that's what I was thinking of as well, Ms. Patrica, that everything we do, we put some type of a bid process out there. And I know some of the board members don't have an appetite for, the advertisement and the RFQ and all that. I don't think it needs to be just basically hitting the areas that, like you were mentioning, the AASA and national organizations that have to do with superintendents, and then allowing them to just, submit their information. I don't think it needs to be very cumbersome, but I really think if we're going to do this right, we have to do it right from step 1 to step 10.
So I'm hearing one is, and again, separating the criteria that Ms. Vaughn initially was speaking to in terms of what you'd like to see, the criteria, whether it's criteria, their experience, their cost, their process. But first, as I'm hearing, is the bid process. Just by a show of hands, thumbs up, how many would like to see a bid process?
If you can make it verbal, please.
So we'll start with Ms. Morgan.
Yes.
Live with that.
Yes.
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 Thumbs up. Thumbs up.
Yes.
Okay. And just weighing in a little bit more, Ms. Vaughn, anything more you would add in terms of what would bring you more comfort on the bid process?
Well, I think it's all well and good to do a bid process, but not as the very first step. I think we need
Right.
to take a look and see who offers the services. I mean, we don't want just everybody in the world saying, oh, yeah, I can do it cheaper. Or what. I mean, isn't that the first thing? And what happened to the idea of polling some of the school districts that have recently, like Polk County, that have recently done a superintendent search, or counties that have recently done searches for, executive chiefs and that sort of thing. I mean, that kind of thing happens all the time. I believe we already know about Polk County, which group, and they said they were very happy. So isn't that one of the big things? I mean, that you poll people that have used different organizations? I'm not sure where we're going with, let's put out there so that we have 15 different search companies to choose from. It just doesn't make sense, especially in the time frame that we have. And that doesn't mean we're not going to vet people. It doesn't mean we won't do a bid process once we have, let's say, several, 2 or 3, that we know offer the services that we need. That, to me, is the most important thing.
Attorney Dupree, Bruno?
I need some clarification from the board. When you say bid process, are you talking a formal procurement process? Or are you I don't understand what do you mean by bid process?
Then Ms. Morgan, oh, go ahead. You brought it up first.
Well, yeah,
Ms.
what I
Patrica.
mean, we need to advertise, we need to cast a wide net, and then we as a board need to come together and figure out what the selection process will be, what will the creation of a rubric for what we are looking for in a firm. We need to have that conversation after, and then we as a board decide which firm we're going to use. So not a formal bid process. I was using that by way of example and comparison.
Ms. Gittens, what exactly were you thinking?
And I totally agree. I think I mentioned it about 5 minutes ago that I'm not talking about procurement doing this and doing that. We know the companies, I mean, you can Google a list of all the companies that have, that handle educational searches for administrative positions, and send them, and we can even narrow it down to that larger school districts or whatever, and just send an email. I mean, we're not talking about formalizing, and I just think we're overthinking it. We contact the people that we know do it, and I think Mr. Cashman, I keep forgetting your name, but anyway, to me, that's one of the things we look to you as our consultant with this to help us do. To come back to us with a list of, here's the people that fall within this range, and here's a letter, an email we're looking to send out to them. We all look at it, say yay or nay, that looks fine, and we go for it. We put it out there, and people that want to do it will do it, and don't. We're overthinking too much this process, I believe.
And then Ms. Patrica?
Yeah, so what I'm thinking about is an RFQ process, but not an RFQ, in the sense that we basically establish what it is we expect a firm to do for us, and then we advertise, and then we do the same thing we've already been talking about. So we go to the Consortium of Greater City School Districts and we say, who do you use? We go to the 60 counties in the state of Florida and say, who do you use? But to me, that's what I'm thinking. It's not a bid process. It's an informal RFQ process. We state what we want. We determine, with the help of Mr. Cashman if need be, who we should be telling that we're doing the search, and then we invite applicants and we use a rubric to screen them.
Ms. Patrica?
And I would suggest something similar to what you did, Ms. Vaughn, which was you worked with someone, I don't know who you worked with, to come up with a list of places that can be advertised and potential costs, and then whoever on the board does that work brings it back to us for approval, and this is where we're going to advertise, and this is how I came up with this list, and then we come back together as a group and decide, yes, we'll spend that money, no, we won't spend that money, in order to advertise. Just sort of kind of what we did to get this far in the interim process, we will do for the permanent process as well.
Chair Jordan?
Yes, I just want to, and perhaps if there are names that some of us know, I know that, like I had said, 3 of them had already sent these to us. There was another one who did send just a letter, another company, McPherson and Jacobson's, which we've not received their information yet. And then I was just checking with Ms. Roman, the one that Ms. Fisher had spoken about. Someone did tell us that that was a good organization to reach out to. She did reach out to them, and we had no respond. So I just wanted to put that out there.
So what I'm hearing, and if we could then step back on the quote, the bid process, it was meant as the informal RFQ process. Is there agreement that there would be an RFQ process once we determine what we're looking for from a company? Just a thumbs up? Yes. So it'd be an informal RFQ process once we determine what we're looking for out of a company.
So, clarification. So for me, when I'm hearing RFQ process, I'm hearing procurement and I'm hearing the legal formalities. And I know that's not what the intention is, but I really need to make sure that we're clear. So you want to advertise to be able to solicit firms to send information to the board, and then from there you just want to make a selection. Is that what we're talking about?
How about request for scope of work?
Request for
Make
scope.
you feel better legally?
Yeah, because I don't like the word RFQ. That brings in a lot of other legalities in it. So I want to
Request for SOW?
request for a statement of work from the different potential.
That's essentially what we got for you, Mr. Cashman.
Yep. Is there comfort with that request for statement of work once we determine what criteria we have for that work? Okay, just going down, so is there yays? Cross, Ms. Morgan, you okay?
Oh, yes.
And, sorry.
Ms. Gittens?
And may I add to that then, what I was suggesting before, and I don't know if it's within your scope of work, to just give us a list of the potential, individuals. I think we're saying advertise, like what Ms. Vaughn did for the interim, is different from what we're saying in this situation. We're looking at a very narrow scope of individuals that fit what we're looking for to do for us. And if we could just narrow that down, and we're sending them communication that here's what we're looking for, not the complete getting with communication and putting together an ad, and we are narrowing that down to the people that we know can do what we need, but we just need to know if they're interested in doing it for us.
And then Ms. Patrica?
I don't know who can do this. I'm sorry, I don't have a list in mind. I don't know the company. The point of casting a wide net is not, I know these 3 firms and Ms. Vaughn knows these 4, and
It's not what I said. When I'm called on, I will respond to that.
All right, Ms. Vaughn, then Ms. Gittens.
Okay, I guess I'm totally confused, because when I was saying advertise and listening to Ms. Gittens, I was thinking, like, put out an ad and actually pay somebody for a search firm. They should be looking for us because that's their business. But one word, Google. I mean, how long can it take us to Google these? I mean, I was doing it earlier, and the first one that popped up was one that we've already heard from. How long does it take to do that and to poll our Florida districts that have recently used a national search firm? I don't think we're going to come up with a cast of thousands for this. I think we're beating a dead horse, and I can think of about 2 different firms that we'll probably wind up with anyway. But sure, put out an email, Google, put out an email. This is what we need. Within X number of days, send us whether you are qualified to do that and whether you have the means and experience to do it. And if we don't hear back or they don't have everything we want, we zap them.
Okay.
I've been thrown off by this whole advertise because I think Ms. Gittens and Ms. Patrica have totally different views of what it means to advertise. Me, Google it.
Ms. Gittens and then Ms. Morgan?
Okay, my thing is, just like you mentioned Florida School Board Association, and someone mentioned earlier, every state has one. So why can we not just send an email to each of them for any potential, firms that would handle a school district our size, give them what we're looking for, and then, that narrows it down as well. I don't know. I still think we're overthinking all this.
Morgan and then Ms. Fisher?
So I guess my concern is public perception. If we reach out, if we do a Google search and we say, these are the names we came up with, somebody will have an issue with that. If we do things ourselves without inviting in a public way people to participate, the public is going to be in a position to say, this is not a transparent work by the district. So, yes, it's a lot of work and it takes time, but I think at this point, we owe the people in the community a very transparent process, which includes casting as wide a net as possible to draw in all of the possible applicants. So that's where I'm coming from.
Chair Jordan?
And I'm just going to say again, the ones we have one from Florida. The other ones that we've received are, one is from Iowa, one is from Illinois, and the other one's from Nebraska. So they're already outside of the state of Florida. They already know that we're looking. So we already have, that's taken place right now. And some of them had sent in what could be their scope of work. We have 8 pages on one, and the other one's like 8 pages, 26 to 50. So all of them have every school that they've ever worked with. If you all looked at it, it has so much information in these. And not to say that we don't get more, but we do have at least a starting point of where we're at, and perhaps we go to Indeed or any of those other ones where there's no cost, and that's out there with professionals.
Okay. Ms. Giovanelli, did you have some thoughts on this?
Yes, I think we're just overthinking this a lot, but I think the broader our range is, the better the applicants are. I say better. I don't. That's not the word I want to use. I think it opens it up for anyone and everyone. So the broad scope is all we need. And I think we need to pick 3, like we did. We talked about this earlier. So pick 3 and use them, and let's move on.
Yeah, thank you. Additional comments, Ms. Gittens?
I'm going to say again, we narrow it down to, and I agree with what Ms. Morgan said, that we have to be transparent and casting the broad net. In education, in leadership and superintendentship and in education, I don't know who would know more about that than the state school boards and the state superintendent associations. Even those 2 would be a very broad net. Anybody within that field would be connected either to their state organization or their superintendent organization. And I would like to say if Mr. Cashman could do that for us, just to, give us the list of all of the state school boards and the state superintendent associations. But I don't know. Either we're going to just do an ad and put it out there like we did we talked about the other, and then just call it George. At this point, I think that's going to be the easiest thing, just do a quick ad.
Thank you, Attorney Dupree.
Yeah, I was going to agree with you, Ms. Gittens, because I think at this point, to maximize the transparency and to get the broad net as possible, if this is the direction that you want to move to, then the board, I would recommend do the ad, see who applies for the ad. I don't think that the board should try to find people itself, because that always, it's not transparent. So put it out there in the public. Whoever wants to apply, and then from there, the board can make its decision as to which firm it wants to use. Pick 3 and then make your decision.
Additional feedback? Ms. Fisher?
Yes,
and Chair
so
Jordan.
we have agreed that we're doing a national search. And so our local school boards association, the Florida School Boards Association and the Florida Association of School Administrators are connected with their they're part of the national organizations. And so that is a wide net. But if we did the ads similar to what we did nationally with this, for a firm, for a search firm, that would be transparent. I think it would be meeting the requirements and needs of our community who are interested in transparency. And just as an aside, so the most recent searches in Florida have been Polk, Sarasota, Martin, and Escambia, and Florida School Boards Association has been their search firm.
Okay. Chair Jordan?
Ms. Fisher, I was just going to say that the School Board Association, that is what they do. It's not that we would contact them or the superintendents and they would give us search firms. They actually are the firm that does this.
Okay. So just in hearing that discussion, then what would be Ms. Patrica?
I was going to say, can we suggest that we choose one of the 7 of us? No offense,
Yes.
Mr. Cashman, but I don't really want to pay you to do this work.
Yep.
When I think that one of us can do it, to come up with a list of potential places to advertise, the cost, the language of the advertisement, and then when we reconnoiter on whenever we do that, we can decide as a board.
This is a good opportunity because each board member has had a project, so this is another good opportunity for another board member to participate and contribute to this process.
So we know that Ms. Vaughn has already, she's done the one. I don't know if we want to continue to ask her to do this, or Ms. Morgan, because I know we have a website, Ms. Fisher. Ms. Giovanelli, are you going to be here?
Right, I'm going out of town, so
Okay.
it'll be too hard.
So.
No, I'm good, thank you.
So I have a question. So could we not just use the list that Ms. Vaughn came up with for advertising nationally and cast
add
that
back
net and
in
see what
the
happens?
others.
I mean, she already did the legwork for that.
Correct.
So,
You just need a different ad, though.
right. And I'd be happy to help in any way I
I
could.
think that you're being voluntold to write the ad, Ms. Fisher. That is the
Yes.
sense I'm getting right now.
Thumbs up for Ms. Fisher.
Yeah, but
Okay.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank
Fisher.
you. Thank you, Ms.
Ms.
Fisher.
Fisher, are you suggesting that we pay $3,000 to advertise for a,
Do the freebies on there.
I know, well, she said the list. I'm just clarifying
Could we not review,
places. Is that what you're talking about?
could we not review the list because there were some on there that were no charge?
Yeah, that's what I'm asking. In other words, what you're saying is use the ones that we had, like Indeed and those that are free, not the ones that are going to charge us $1,100.
That would be my preference, not to use the ones that are going to
My total
charge us
preference is not to
$1,100.
spend more money on
There's-
this because we're never mind.
Yeah, superintendent searches are an everyday occurrence across this country, and certainly a lot in Florida. And I think that if we have already existing roadmaps, we should take that. And there are many national periodicals and publications that do this kind of advertising, so I think we could take advantage of that without cost.
Yep. So I'm hearing consensus, so Ms. Fisher, you'll follow up on that?
Yes.
Okay.
May I make one comment?
Gittens?
I honestly, I still feel we are almost a $2 billion organization, and this is of such supreme importance that we find the right process, the right person, that, and I'm not talking about wasting money, but if it takes us some money to get to that, I always go back to you get what you pay for. And you have to, if we're going to spend $3,000 that's going to get us the supreme person that sits in that position, I do believe it's worth the $3,000, and the community will let us know if they disagree.
Ms. Vaughn?
I would take that 3,000 that Ms. Gittens is talking about and use it to pay the premier, not to advertise to find the premier.
Ms. Patrica?
I think that's a discussion we can have when Ms. Fisher brings the job description back and the list, and we can go through the list and thumbs up, thumbs down, and then make a vote. I hear what you're saying, Ms. Gittens, and I would tend to agree, but unless and until I have an advertisement in front of me and I've thought about, is Indeed enough, and done that research and called my colleagues across the state and across the nation, I'm not really going to know. So I would like to go into that discussion with an open mind and see where we stand as a board at that time.
So what I have as a follow-up is Ms. Fisher will bring back a list of places to advertise and cost, and then you'll have a collective discussion on where you'd like to advertise.
Yes.
Okay. Anything more that needs to be discussed there? Ms. Vaughn?
Well, we were going to start with what we're looking for, and we hadn't even done that.
Okay. This is, well, first we
And I'm just going to say, I would add 0 cost to advertise, and I would also say that it seems like a couple people are purposefully wanting to draw out this process for whatever reason. And that's why I mean, if every single, somebody just named, Ms. Fisher just named, what, 7 different districts that.
4.
4, okay, well, I'll find 3 more. That 4 different districts that have recently gone through this process, they all use the same firm. I'm just having a really hard time with this. I think the transparency piece that our constituents are interested in is what we are looking for from a firm. I've already had a couple people make suggestions. As a matter of fact, the last suggestion, I emailed that person back and I said, thank you, we already have that person on the list. So certainly the public can send in what they feel if they know a national search firm that does this. But I'm sorry, but I really feel like that this is being drawn out for some particular reason or agenda, and where the transparency needs to be, we need to have time in our process to do the real transparency of putting out the names, you know, having the forums and having the things that a national organization would do for us, and helping us with the web page and publishing resumes that we get for, you know, the way Polk County did on their site. I don't know why we're dragging our feet on this, so.
let's take the time, because we still have,
I'm on this advertising and drawing this particular aspect out.
okay. Let's at least take some time. We still have 30 minutes to start speaking to what are the expectations we'd have of firms. So you're going to have a process where you're getting the word out to get firms to submit a scope. What is it that you're looking for in a firm? Ms. Gittens?
I like the way that Hazard Young, if everybody looks at that one, has their scope of services. They have the engagement phase, the recruitment phase, the selection phase, the transition. Very clear, very simple. I've gotten phone calls from a couple of groups as well that are interested in doing it. And this is basically what they do. They know how to involve the community. The one lady that spoke to me said, we set up the community meetings and we do the advertising and we do all of that. I believe we need to turn that over to the professionals to do so that we are ready to look at when they cast that net, then we look at the fish that are in there and make our determination. This is not our bailiwick. This is not what they do is not what we do. We are waiting for this point over here. Let the people that have professionals, as we screen them and find out, we mentioned the scope of work, the cost and all of that. We know what we're looking for, they know what they do. So let's just simplify it. And if we wanted to, I've seen this on others as well, but just to have the engagement, what does that mean? Do you do community meetings or surveys, or what do you do to help us get to that point, the recruitment phase and the selection phase? We can say to them, okay, we saw where you worked with this group and it took you 6 months to do it. We want to make this right now. We want to get going with this. We don't want to drag it out, but we're giving it to them to speed it up, slow it down, get it done, and we know all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed.
It's been mentioned in terms of the time frame. Is there a time frame the group collectively you want to have a firm selected? So if we backed out from there, is there a date that you have in mind when you want a firm selected?
See, I would like to have it definitely by, I don't know, where are we in May now, by the first part of June? I want to have the process going before the superintendent leaves.
Any other feedback in terms of timeline so we can work backwards from there? Okay, so I'm hearing early June. Mrs. Patrica?
I'm comfortable with mid to late June. Given the travel schedules that I've heard of people on the board, I'm not sure that early June is going to be doable, but I'm certainly comfortable with mid to late June. And if before June 30th is before the new superintendent comes in is important to board members, I can certainly live with that.
Can I say I disagree with that? I think this is not a long-term where we have to have an ad out for 3 weeks or a month. This is just honing in on it. Excuse me, the people that want to do it are going to contact us once they know, and it should be a quick turnaround, or 2 weeks at the most.
Ms. Giovanelli?
Okay, I had to think about this, but schools are going to be ending and people are not going to be making any moves. I think the process does need to be, we're still talking about the permanent, right? I mean, so.
Just the time frame.
Right,
just
so
we're
I
not
think
time
we
frame,
have
we're
to
gonna pick-
leave it, we can't rush this. We have to leave it open because if people are going to think about making the move, there's a process in that. And you've got school's got to end. So I don't know what the northern, when their school's end, but ours is not until June what?
We're talking about.
Right, so I don't see anything happening until school's out and people can, because you're not going to be doing anything. They can't focus on that. I think you've got to give that time. You have to allow for the time.
This would be the selection of the firm.
The firm, not
Okay,
the
but still,
superintendent.
you got to have time.
Attorney DeBree Bruno?
Yeah, that's what I was going to clarify.
Okay.
So I would say by the summer,
Yeah, I mean, we just got
after
to, yeah.
school's out.
So may I ask you all a question then? So you're saying by summer selecting a firm that's going to help us select a superintendent?
The firm is for the permanent superintendent.
No, I get we're
Because we're
talking
already going
about
to have another
permanent.
person in here, so that way we can really concentrate on getting the right firm in, getting them to, because every one of them that I'm looking at right now, they all have their timeline, they have their community outreach, they have, all their scope of work is in here, and basically they all do the same thing. It's just the way that the verbiage that they use, but they all do the same kind of profile development and process for community and stakeholders, and they all do that. So once we get the search picked, and if we're going out, that's going to take us more time to get them back in and to go over those as well. So we're in, geez, where are we now? We're May. I don't even know what day it is anymore. So we're in May now. We're in the middle of May, and we're still, needing to concentrate on getting the interim in, and then getting this information in too. So we definitely will be multitasking.
Well, and I agree with that. I've been saying all along, we should have been multitasking. This process we're talking about right now for the permanent should have happened before, but like you're saying, the easiest part of what we're going to have to do is this firm piece, because for the permanent, they've got everything in line. It's just a matter of us picking which one we want to do. I tend to agree with Ms. Vaughn in one sense that this is, picking the firm is the easy part. So why are we going to take all summer? Add to that, if a part of, we decide to pick a firm that's going to help us get the permanent superintendent, if we don't get them till July sometime, people are away. What happens to the community outreach piece? It's not like where schools are open, everybody's away. We've got to look at the timing of this, so.
Yeah, Attorney Dupree-Bruno.
So let's remember why we are having this discussion. We're having this discussion because concerns were raised that the public did not have input, that basically we picked 3 names for the facilitator, and it was not an open process. So this is why we're having this discussion. So if we're going to open it up beyond the names that we have and do the advertising and do a more formal, transparent, open process, it's going to take a little bit more time. So just remember, and that's, I think, what Ms. Vaughn's point was, is why are we, moving forward with this particular type of process and adding time to it? But this is to the board's discretion based on the prior conversations and where we are today as to how you want to move forward. Completely to the board's discretion.
Ms. Vaughn?
I'm going to reiterate what I said, that, there's Google, there's polling, other school districts, they're the people that have already reached out to us. I think we can come up with a reliable firm for a reasonable cost, but not, this is something, instead of spending money on advertising in the New York Times, I'd rather spend that money for a premier firm. And the sooner we get that firm, the longer period of time we have for that firm to schedule all these things that I think the community is more interested in learning about who our candidates are, the input, the forums, the meetings with different business organizations. I want to see the more time there in the middle once we have the firm, rather than, try to find somebody in Hong Kong that might do this. I mean, really.
So I'm going to push on this and listening to this, because as you're laying out the firms, and I also had a chance to take a look at the firms. They will lay out the scope, the community input, their cost. Typically, what I find is their costs are within fair market that you would find in that particular industry. So if we know that we're bringing back some of those top names that in places we could put the word out, I'm going to just put out there, can we pick a date by mid or late June where the group, where the board is getting together and could finalize a selection of a firm? Just again, kind of go against timeline, knowing that once you pick that firm, they will make sure the timeline gets sped up, is getting the input and everything else you've just laid out. So I would just put it out there to the board to pick a date in June that you'd all feel comfortable with collectively.
You have some dates that you've chosen in June. I don't know those dates off the top of my head, Ms. Jordan. You have those June dates?
I'm sorry, the dates for the meeting?
Yes.
What dates do we have held already? And then do we actually need a,
Ms. Roman, do you see that? Because I know it's here, but I have like 500 pieces of paper. Oh, it's early June.
7th,
June
June 8th.
Right.
It's too early. Well, because right now we're May.
There's also June 14th
Okay.
and June 21st.
I go for the 21st.
21st, that's after school, so everyone can get their kids where they need to get them, and I think I'm with you too, the 21st, by the 21st.
Well, that gives, may I ask a question? Mr. Kaufman, Mr. Cashman, I'm sorry. In your professional experience, how long do you think it would take us to get a firm?
I think in my experience, you'd be able to select a firm by June 21st. Within a 2-week period of time, firms could turn around and provide a scope of services, allowing you ample time to review it and then select.
So I was thinking 2 weeks as well, which is why I'm thinking that the week of the 6th of June. And is it necessary that we have so we're talking about by that deadline, then meeting and making that selection? Okay.
Yeah, and you'd want the time to make sure you're looking at your rubric and the criteria you'd want in terms of selecting that firm.
Well, you're talking 4 weeks then.
No. Oh.
For the 21st, but I would go for the week of the 13th, but it's up
Okay.
to you guys.
Ms. Patrica?
So I'm wondering if we have, I think the first time frame to get down is how hard are we going to push Ms. Fisher to get her work done and bring it back to the board for discussion and approval? If we could nail that date down, then we could nail down the hiring of the
Is
firm date.
5 o'clock too soon for you?
No, it's fine.
You said hiring, so are we looking for a date to have them hired? Am I confused?
No,
No, for her ad.
Right, okay.
I mean, I'm super comfortable with the 21st, but, I'm trying to be respectful of people's schedules, and I know that some members of the board have said that they're not going to be here for long periods of time, and if we're asking those people to review resumes for interims and review scopes of work for search firms and then come back and make those decisions upon returning from vacation, I don't think that's fair to my colleagues. So I'm just trying to be respectful of the timelines that have been put out by people on the board.
So I'd like to suggest for consideration that if you put out there by June 21st, you would select, and then you would then back into the advertisement in terms of when Mr. Fisher would come back, over the next, 1 to 2 weeks, whenever it be reasonable, but allowing enough time that you can then get the word out, get these firms, allowing them about 2 weeks, and then giving you the time to review them and select by the 21st, on the 21st. Ms. Gittens?
Can we vote on that, please?
Can I just
A
ask
consensus, I'm sorry.
Okay.
a question?
Consensus on making decision on the firm by June 21st, on June 21st? By the board? Is there a thumbs up?
Verbal consensus, please.
Verbal. Ms. Morgan?
Did you have a question regarding that,
Yes.
though?
Question, but
Ms.
I can-
Patrica has a question.
She had a question
I can
before.
vote on this and then ask my question.
Okay,
Aye. Yes.
yes.
Live with it.
Yes.
Chair Jordan?
We didn't hear from you
Chair
guys.
Jordan, did we? Oh, yes. Ms. Giovanelli?
I said yes.
Okay. Good. You had a comment, Ms. Patrica?
Yeah, I'm just wondering whether we could ask Ms. Fisher to bring back information to the workshop on May 24th for a potential good cause item on May 25th for the advertisement.
Sure.
Would that, is that good for everybody in terms of a timeline on that?
Yes.
Yes?
Okay. So Ms. Fisher will come back on the 24th, bring the information. You'll put out the ad by the 25th based on the feedback you provided on the 24th. That would allow up to at least 2 weeks for the firms to get information in. And then on June 21st, you would select. Is there any additional discussion we need to have? Oh, go ahead, Ms. Patrica.
Yeah, so then we also need to set a time for us as a board to come together and discuss the SOWs that we receive.
Correct.
And that should obviously be a couple weeks before the June 21st date.
So, Mr. Cashman, I have a couple of comments. Remember that the candidates for the interim, I believe there's a date for that as well that may be intertwined with this. And then, I'm sorry?
June 8th.
No, but don't we have the 25th
May
as well for something?
21st is the deadline for them to apply.
Those are interviews.
Yeah, for the interims. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, so the 25th, is that a date for the interview for the interim?
25th is the board interviews.
Between May 25th and June 4th, that's when we're going to set up, so everybody can do it, whether it's here or virtual or whatever that looks like.
Those are the individual interview dates.
That's the individual ones.
Okay. And then the other thing is that we're going to have another date for the rubric that we don't have yet on the calendar. So just keep that in the back of your mind. And then, Mr. Cashman, we did not get a full consensus vote with regards to the 24th and the 25th from Ms. Fisher. I only heard 2 yeses.
Yeah, so if we could do the verbal again, starting with Ms. Morgan?
Yes. I have a question. What are we voting on at the action meeting exactly?
The advertisement.
Now, wait, we're going to vote on a free, didn't we say we're only putting it in free? Do we need to vote on that?
You said that.
We
I
didn't
said
say
that, okay, I didn't hear a consensus. So in other words, we're going to put out $749 to advertise for a company. That's what I'm not understanding.
We're going to discuss it.
Point of order.
Making a decision today without knowing what the advertisement is or having spoken to our colleagues across the state. I'm not prepared to have that discussion today. We're going to talk about it as a group.
When Ms. Fisher brings it back to us on.
She's bringing back where to advertise
And
for the
amounts.
search firm.
And amounts.
Okay, so on the 24th, we have that held for a meeting. So, I'm sorry, so that you could share that information at that time. And
Absolutely.
that conversation would happen, and then it's a yes or no for the action meeting, which will be the next one.
I get it. I just think it's crazy to spend that kind of money to advertise for a national search firm. And that's why I'm asking, I thought that's what we were going to vote on, and I thought, surely not. Surely we're not going to be voting on spending money. I thought
Okay,
that
so.
we were looking at free places.
So just a reminder, even though we're facilitating in a workshop, to please allow the chair or Mr. Cashman to recognize the speaker so we don't have people over speaking. I think there were a couple of hands up, Chair Jordan.
Yeah, Ms. Fisher and then Ms. Patrica.
I think we did not say that we were going to spend $749 to advertise anywhere. I suggest, first of all, I have done a little bit of research, and there are only so many firms that work in searching for education executives. There's only so many to begin with. So if we have some of the big education periodicals that we can advertise in for free, and in addition, I'll bring the list of others that may cost, and then the vote will happen. I'm going to try to keep it simple and at a minimum, and I will use Google just to see for myself, like really what is out there. Because I know the ones that have already reached out to us are the main national education executive search firms.
Ms. Patrica?
And if I may, through the chair, ask Ms. Vaughn. Ms. Vaughn, how do we overcome the perception of lack of transparency if we don't cast a wide net through the payment of advertisement for this position? Because I have received criticism via email about the way we chose our facilitator, and I don't think there was anything wrong with the process, Mr. Cashman. This is not a criticism toward you, but it is a criticism I have received as a board member, and in responding to that criticism and trying to fulfill the desire on this board for transparency, could you help me to understand how we are transparent?
May I answer?
Yes, please.
May I finish my question? Can you please stop interrupting me?
Point of order, point of order.
You were done.
Ms. Patrica, then Ms. Vaughn.
Go ahead, Ms. Patrica.
No, I again was interrupted, so I lost my train of thought.
Ms. Vaughn?
She wanted me to help her understand why I am appearing to be non-transparent.
No, that was not my question. That was not my question.
That's what I heard.
Ms. Vaughn, I believe the question is
Advertising.
how are you transparent, given the criticism that was made when choosing the facilitator? How are we to be transparent in the choosing of the national search firm if it is not open through an advertisement? I believe that is the question. Is that correct?
If I may, how do we overcome the perception of a lack of transparency in the hiring of a national search firm unless we actually advertise to hire a national search firm? I don't understand how we do that.
Okay, so that was the question. Thank you, Ms. Patrica. Ms. Vaughn, did you have an answer? Okay.
Yes, I have an answer. As I've said all along, there's a little thing called Google. There's a little thing called calling up every county if you want to see who did they use. The people that are search firms, they already know that we're looking for a superintendent, and many have already contacted us. I think we can put out a wide net doing what we're doing. And as I said before, I'm making my own judgment call, and obviously I disagree with everybody else on the board, but I said I want to see this process move ahead, because the sooner we do that, the longer we have for the real nitty-gritty of the transparency, which is once we have the firm and they start scheduling all of these meetings and help us with the website, there's where I want to see the big transparency. And you can't please all the people all the time. And in my view, as an elected representative, my decision is move it ahead, don't pay money for an advertisement, and why would you even have to advertise for something like that when we can draw on the expertise of 67 counties? That's my answer.
And if I can ask for, I'm sorry, go ahead. If I can ask for clarification here, and it may be Attorney Dupree.
I'm in the minority, so.
No, but I want to just share in terms of what I'm hearing. One is, in terms of keeping this on track, is June 21st, firm would be selected, and so you're keeping this process moving along. And Attorney Dupree, Bruno, you might be able to speak to this or let me know who I should. If on May 24th, Ms. Fisher is bringing back potential places to advertise. And as I'm hearing the discussion, as a collective group, you'll make a decision where you want to advertise. If you determine at the same time, if it's appropriate, the collective board and others can still put word out to these bigger school districts where you've had the experiences, all the things that Ms. Vaughn is speaking to. So is that something we should speak to, or at least acknowledge that it may or may not be an ad that you decide to put out, but in addition to, as of May 25th, you'd also collectively find other ways to get word out, whether it's by word of mouth or by ad. Is that correct? It could be by word of mouth and ad?
I think that's a fair statement.
Yep. I agree.
Okay. And so we'll go back, so May 24th, Ms. Fisher will bring back potential places to advertise, and then as a collective group, you'll determine, do you want to advertise in those places, or how do you want to get the word out? By May 25th, you'll get the word out by ad and by word of mouth. We'll make sure that date, we pick a date that we want. I'm sorry, we're going to need a date that we want those firms to submit their scope of work, and June 21st, you would pick. You'd pick the firm. Is there a date we want to pick? Oh, go ahead.
Just one thing I would add is that by May 24th, Ms. Fisher would also have the sample ad.
Yep. Thank you.
And it better be a good one.
So
Okay.
could I recommend that if we're saying by the 24th, and if we decide to do that, then by June 7th, they should all be in, and that gives us those 2 weeks to the 21st to decide? Does that work for everybody?
That would be giving them 1 week to submit an advertisement getting out.
Well, if it's June 24th, if they put it out May 24th, so that gives
like
you
a week
the
and a half.
week of May 24th, and then May 31st through the, that's 2 weeks, so it'd be the 24th through the 7th.
The 7th, okay.
Actually, 3.
1, 2, well, we're
Okay.
starting off Monday, I'm trying to go Monday to
Yeah.
Monday. So that would give them,
The June
But you
7th?
have the, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Ms. Gittens.
You would have the 30th through the 5th, you got the 6th through the 12th, and the 13th through the 19th. Or, I see what you're saying.
No,
So
them
we
to
would have to
submit.
have them back before then. Okay. And may I make one statement on Ms. Fisher? When you do get even a sample of your advertisement, if you could share it with us so that when we come on the 24th, we've got in our minds what we would, like and what we might like to add to expedite it all.
Absolutely.
So and these would be in by the 7th, once it's determined? Okay. Anything more on this topic?
And then the 22nd would be your action meeting to vote for the selection of the firm,
June 22nd?
is the action meeting.
Okay.
Great.
So
Discuss it on the 21st, right?
you discussed, so if I'm going to have to do any negotiations, we really need to make a decision on the 21st so I can finalize whatever contract so that it can come before you on the 22nd in good cause.
correct. That's how it looks right now, as it stands.
So we're saying then they would be in by the 7th. So from the 7th, that week of the 7th and the 14th, we would be looking at them to make our own determinations? I'm just trying to clarify.
Okay, so once you receive them, so then they'll be sent out, so you have those 2 weeks to go over all of those. We actually do have a meeting, a hold for the 14th, if we need to have that conversation on the 14th, because we would have already had everything in by the 7th, so you've already been in 1 week. So if we have that meeting, and that can be put on the agenda for the 14th for conversation, for us to do that, and then if we need to, if there's any other stuff that we might need to do, because let's see, the 18th, I'm making sure. Okay, so yeah, so the 14th, we do have a meeting on hold. We could work on it on that date, so that's our week. Then if there's additional time that we need, that gives us that time to do whatever we need to do, bring it back on the 21st, finalize it, and then the 22nd,
Second,
we vote. Does that work, or? Ms. Morgan?
So I think we need to go for a decision on the 14th that gives the board attorney a week to
opportunity.
negotiate the contract. I think we can make that decision in a meeting on the 14th. I don't see why we need more time.
And actually, so we could do, so on the 14th, we'll put that on the agenda then. That will be the agenda. So, and then Ms. Dupree Bruno could then negotiate.
Point of order. Could you repeat your comment, please, Ms. Morgan?
Yes, I asked that we make the decision on the 14th, we discuss and decide on the 14th, which would give the board attorney a week to negotiate the contract before our meeting on the 22nd, when we would make it formal. I think we can get the work done, the discussion and the selection in one meeting.
And actually, we could use that meeting that could be that meeting. I mean, because we don't have the agenda for that meeting yet.
Yeah.
So that could actually be that meeting. Are you here?
Ms. Giovanelli?
So, and I understand, I think the 14th is probably a little bit a better date to allow, we have to have where's the community stakeholder input in any of this, and we need to allow time for them to be able to see what's going on, or, so that's why I think we do need that time before the vote, the 21st vote, is that where?
22nd.
Second, excuse me. So the 14th is probably very important, because at that point, that'll give time for to have stakeholder input, so, in this process, unless we're going to have a committee involved, that would, I don't know where that's at, but, I mean, we need, I think.
When the firms, they're the ones who are going to set up all the committees and everything going forward.
Okay.
So there'll be, and every one of these that I have read, I've seen where they are all,
Okay.
there's a lot of community outreach.
Well, that's just really important, and we haven't really talked about it that much, so I just want to.
Ms. Jordan,
Yes.
you can make the 14th a briefing
Yes.
to
I
allow
was just
public
thinking
comment
that
on
too.
the agenda.
That.
So that will be then the community can definitely come in and speak on it.
And I know we're coming to time, but I'd take a couple other comments and then I'll go over what we've agreed to today. Ms. Gittens?
And I was going to say that too, that I think all of our meetings going forward, I mentioned this last week about these discussions should be either special meetings or briefings so that we do have public input.
Yeah.
And when we are talking about selecting the firm and all that, that's the purpose of having the webpage. All of that information can be out there so they can see what we're doing. Then when we have our meeting on the 14th, there can be a special meeting or a briefing, and they can weigh in. They can always weigh in the comment section of the webpage at any given time, and I think we've got that covered.
Good point.
Good stuff.
Well, thank you. I know we covered a lot today. Is there anything more on this topic? Otherwise, I'll go over what we've agreed to. That's okay. We have follow-up on the rubric. I'll work with staff on a rubric to share with the board. I'll work with Attorney Dupree Bruno and the appropriate people to determine a date that will come back together with the board to review the rubric. We agreed that once we have the rubric, you'll select 3 to 5 finalists that you'll interview. And as it relates to the board that the firms that we were just speaking to, on May 24th, Ms. Fisher will bring back an ad and a sample. May 25th, you'll decide, you'll put that word out in terms of how you're advertising and getting the communication out. June 7th, all the firms will have their information due. On the 14th, we'll have a briefing where we'll review that and make a determination, and that'll allow Mr. Attorney Dupree Bruno to finalize the hiring of the firm by the 22nd of June. Did I get that correct?
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Cashman, if we could just get a verbal consensus on that timeline, please.
Okay, a verbal consensus?
Yes.
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 Okay. Anything else we missed before we adjourn? Ms. Patrica?
Do we need to set up a time to discuss the rubric that will be used for the face-to-face interviews?
We do.
Well, we still have meetings that we have on hold, so we
That's
have,
fine. As long as
Yep.
it's on our radar, I trust that you will get with Mr. Cashman and schedule that.
Mr. Pre-Bruno?
You're probably going to have one additional meeting because you need to have the first rubric to help you select the candidates done prior to the 21st. So most likely there's going to be an additional meeting at some point, and at that meeting you can also talk about your interview rubric.
Again, as long as we don't need to decide the date today, if it's one of those held dates or whatever, as long as you're going to be working to get that scheduled as the chair, I appreciate that. Thank you.
And I think that our administrative assistants, they know the dates that you all are, or if anybody's not going to be here, they have those dates as well.
Okay.
So that will be easier. That way we make sure that everybody's here.
Anything else for today's discussion? Nothing else? I'll turn it back over to you, Chair Jordan.
We do have good of the order, even though we're here for this, so I'm just going to go around to see if there is anybody that has anything for good of the order today. Ms. Giovanelli?
Just thank you, Mr. Cashman, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. G.
No, thank you.
Ms. Patrica? Ms. Fisher?
Thank you, Mr. Cashman, and have a safe and healthy weekend, everyone.
Thank you. Ms. Gittens?
Yes, thank you very much, and thank you to everyone for this meeting. And I just want to announce, I will be having a community meeting on Tuesday, the 18th, this coming Tuesday at Blessed Savior Church on Richmond, and I will, on my Facebook and all that, you'll be able to see where. It'll be at 6 o'clock at Blessed Savior Church on 215 Richmond. So, and I'll put more information out about it. And I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Ms. Vaughn?
I have no comments.
Thank you. Ms. Morgan?
I have none except to say thank you.
Okay, and I want to thank you too and welcome. And Ms. Stillwell, thank you so much for being here with us and doing this. And Ms. Roman, thank you as well. And we have one more thing.
Sorry, I apologize.
Ms.
So
Giovanelli.
wait, the 24th, that's just a workshop, then there's no, and we're picking candidates, that there's no public, should that be a briefing
We have other, which,
on the 24th?
we have more meetings before the 24th.
Candidates. It says workshop, that's, if you're choosing candidates at all, at what point do we involve, after the 3 to 5 candidate? Is
For
that
the
what you want to do?
For the interim?
Yeah, for the interim, yeah, that's,
I agree, it should be a briefing.
Ms. Gittens brought up the fact that maybe we should be having briefings when it comes to this part of it, and I would support that.
We're going to have both. We will definitely have both, so we could.
Workshops?
We'll have both workshops as well as briefings.
Well, okay. May I make a suggestion that that I've said before, that all of them be either briefings or special meetings?
It's important for us to have workshops where we, as a board, decide the direction that we want to go before the back and forth conversation that we have in workshops, I think, is really important. I don't know if we can do a workshop and a briefing on the same day, and I don't even know if that's necessary. Ms. Fisher could probably present her information at a briefing, right?
Yes.
So I agree. The public comment piece in terms of choosing those interim candidates is really important.
And I know that with the website, we are getting tons of community involvement with that for sure.
But can I ask Attorney Bruno a question then? So what precludes us from having discussion as we're having it now, if it's a briefing or a special meeting? I thought that we would be able to have that same type of discussion. It would just allow a portion of the meeting for the community to be able to speak. And also, I want to add to that maybe we should look, as we get further down this process, at having an evening meeting as opposed to a morning or day, because several of the comments that I've gotten is when we're making these decisions to have input from the community, that it be at a time that they can attend. And I just don't see how community or public comment disrupts us from having conversation. It's just one portion of the meeting.
You do have to be careful with your action meetings. That is for when you're taking your formal votes. And the discussions, if you look at your protocol manual, the opportunity to have those in-depth discussions is what you had today in formulating your processes and talking things through, and all of that usually is done in your workshop. Your briefings are normally for your staff to come in and be able to give you a briefing on various topics, but given the circumstances, we'll use the briefings for some of these as well.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but is that a legality that it has to be, or is that something that we've just done?
That's part of your,
to do it?
that's part of your protocol manual. I would not advise you to have, because action meetings are very different. They're very succinct. They're for formal actions that you're taking. If you're not ready to take a formal action on a particular topic, then you really should be discussing it at a workshop, or again, we're going to open it up for the briefing so we can have the public comment for these types of discussions. But I would not have them at an action meeting, because this is formal. You can have your motions and all of those things, and it can get confusing. So we don't want to do that.
I was saying, no. I'm sorry, you may have been confused. When I was talking about these planning meetings as a special meeting or a briefing, not an action meeting.
The special meeting is an action meeting.
Okay.
So a special meeting is an action meeting that is not pre-planned. We have to give 2 days notice, and that's what's considered a special action meeting. But we can have briefings and have the public come in and give their comments on whatever the agenda is for the briefing. So that will probably be the best alternative. You will have, I'm sure, some special action meetings as well, because you will have to take some formal votes on some of the decisions that you're making.
Okay. Mr. Pri-Bruno, did you have any good of the order?
No, thank you, Doctor. Thank you, Mr. Cashman, for coming today, and I look forward to working with you on this process.
Thank you. Seeing no other things to come before this board, this meeting is adjourned, and thank you so very much, every one of you.
Thank you. I forgot. I think it's really hard.